The year is 2029. A young boy named Akira cries in front of a family's house, overwhelmed with longing for his father and mother. Every moment, an older girl, Toasa, shows deep empathy for him, holding him tightly and assuring him that everything would be all right, that she would never leave his side. Her father, too, proves to be a kind man, offering comfort and support to the grieving child. 9 years later, in 2038, in the middle of the night, Toasa works in her office while the news plays in the background, reporting yet another story of people harmed by the unchecked rise of artificial intelligence. This time, citizens were organizing a petition to limit the government's use of AI, trying to slow down a technology spiraling out of control. A protest with 50,000 people made headlines. During a televised interview, one woman explained she had been fired because her employer claimed she wasn't skilled enough with AI. At the same time, a desperate father reported that his son was so deluded he wanted to marry an artificial intelligence. Curious, Toasa asked her own robot, Ikikishima, what it thought. The machine replied that AI could locate, analyze, and organize information according to its programming, but lacked the concept of a soul. Toasa, however, countered that, at the end of the day, the human soul was nothing more than electrical impulses generated by the body. The next morning, still in bed, Akira made his feelings crystal clear. He was in love with the girl who had supported him unconditionally since childhood. Half asleep, as if still dreaming, he whispered that he loved Toasa, and the mischievous look on his face betrayed the thoughts he was entertaining about her. But his dream paradise was shattered when his own robot, Tajitsu, woke him up. Realizing how far he had gone in his fantasy, Akira felt guilty. As he got ready, he asked Tajitsu if there was any interesting news. The AI projected an article praising the brilliance of young Dr. Toasa Amagi, who, at only 19 years old, had already taken the android technology field by storm, and was even revolutionizing cryogenics. Seeing that his childhood friend was becoming more famous by the day, Akira accepted Tajitsu's suggestion to reinforce her cybersecurity. Later that morning, after breakfast with Toasa's father, whom Akira also called Dad, Toasa finally appeared. She had slept in, having worked through the entire night on one of her projects. She reminded Akira that he had training that day and teased him about the joys of being young. He suggested that if she really wanted to feel young, she should try going to school like a normal person. Toasa replied that there was no point in attending a place to learn what she already knew. In fact, she thought Akira was the brilliant one, and that he should drop college altogether to join her research. Her father chuckled and reminded them both that life required more than logic and reason to be complete. Eventually, Akira realized it was time to leave, said his goodbyes, and set off. After he was gone, Toasa and her father reflected on the fact that it had been nearly 10 years since Akira came to live with them, and that they should do something special to celebrate. On the street, on his way to training, Akira noticed paparazzi trying desperately to snap photos of the famous young scientist living under the same roof as him. Toasa Amagi was extraordinary. At just 18, she had already piled up doctorates and patents, led her own company, and served as a research consultant. To feel worthy of a woman like that, Akira knew he would have to upgrade his role from family to boyfriend. The only question was how. When Akira was 7, he lost his parents in a car accident. Since they were estranged from the rest of the family, he was left completely alone. That's when his father's best friend, Dr. Kazuya Amagi, took him in. On the very first day in his new home, Toasa, being a year older, asked Akira to call her Big Sister. The boy never objected. In fact, even at such a young age, he felt nothing but immense gratitude toward his new family. The truth was, they had saved him. Still, as he grew older, Akira could no longer be satisfied with just being Toasa's little brother. Later that day, at javelin practice, Akira managed a throw of 37 meters. Impressive, but still not enough to beat Takeda, meaning he now owed his friend lunch. Meanwhile, Toasa was in an important meeting with a partner about sharing seismic design data, just another one of her countless discussions on complex matters. After granting the access that would allow her partner to build the world's largest bridge, she ended the call and turned her focus back to something more personal, the gift she wanted to give Akira. Her father had already chosen a limited edition pair of sneakers from 10 years ago, but she wanted something different. Scrolling through old photos of her brother, she tried to spark an idea. The problem was, he had grown up so much that she no longer knew exactly what he might want. Hours later, Akira returned home and was greeted by Toasa, who slipped into her motherly tone, asking if he would confide in her if something was ever wrong. He teased her for worrying too much and left her hanging without an answer. Flustered, Toasa simply told him that dinner was ready. After such a long, exhausting day, Akira wasted no time diving into the meal, especially since it turned out to be stuffed peppers, one of his favorites. His sister asked what he wanted to eat the next day and promised to cook it for him. But Akira reminded her that tomorrow was his turn to cook, and he already had a recipe he was dying to try. After dinner, the two of them stayed in the TV room, where Toa was trying to figure out what her brother might be interested in so she could find the perfect gift for him. But it was hard for him to say anything, especially since they already had so many things at home to keep them busy. Suddenly, their robots caught their attention with an urgent matter. Apparently, a large part of the population was demanding that Toa put a stop to her research on Robotech Omagi. A church leader, for example, from an ethical and religious standpoint, would not tolerate the creation of androids, given how strikingly similar they were to human beings. Because of the seriousness of the situation, Kazuya joined his daughter to talk about what could be done. The young scientist was deeply worried about the future of her work, especially since, in her view, the development of androids would bring enormous benefits to society. Faced with that, her father promised to reach out to some analysts and government officials he knew to better understand the next steps. Toa felt grateful for her father's support, while Akira was left disheartened, feeling there was nothing useful he could possibly do for his sister. Later that evening, the boy reads several articles online about the global pressure to shut down Robotech research. According to Tajitsu's calculations, there was an 82% chance that Toasa would be forced to stop. At that moment, Kazuya appeared and asked Akira to be a strong emotional support for his sister because, in such a delicate time, she would need him more than ever. After their father left, Tajitsu teased Akira about his obvious romantic feelings for his stepsister. Even so, the boy swore he would do everything he could to stand by the woman he loved through this difficult chapter. In the days that followed, there wasn't much flashy or dramatic that Akira could do after all. He was just a young man living under the same roof. Still, whatever he could do, he did with all his heart. The most important thing, he thought, was to keep her encouraged and hopeful, and so he devoted himself to exactly that. One day, Kazuya told his children that Toasa's rival companies were heavily invested in pushing for Robotech's downfall, simply to sabotage her and take the lead in the technological race. In response, Toa mentioned that she had been receiving a suspicious flood of financing and membership emails in recent days. Her father assured her they all seemed to come from the same sender. Either way, the scientist never accepted any of those offers. The next day, she was staring at those emails, silently wishing people would stop trying to sabotage her work in every possible way. Just then, Akira came home from school and, mustering his courage, invited his sister to go to the zoo with him. Hearing that invitation, all she could do was run to her room, realizing that, in fact, Akira had just asked her out. Through her watch, the Kikushima asked whether this wasn't the perfect time to finally tell the boy how she truly felt. But Toa was far from ready to take that kind of leap. On the contrary, she jumped online, searching for any kind of solution to this complicated dilemma. One way or another, in the end, she agreed to go to the zoo. And Akira had nailed the invitation. It had been years since his sister had gone anywhere like that. And the truth was, she was excited, practically glowing like a child as she watched the animals. After the zoo, they went to the movies, where both of them felt the undeniable sense that something more than friendship was in the air. But the outing didn't end there. Wanting to prove he knew what he was doing, Akira took his sister to a spa, where she enjoyed a princess-like evening of luxurious baths and massages. When the spa was over, the two went to a cafe and marveled at the robot that came to clear their plates once they had finished eating. Toasa thought it was the cutest thing in the world after all. Robots had always been her favorite. Then, out of nowhere, Akira pulled a gift from his bag and, with sudden bravery, handed it to his sister. A plush toy called Dove, which he had built himself using Toasa's own artificial intelligence framework. The girl was amazed to realize that Akira had been studying her research in secret. Back when she had asked what he had been interested in lately, he'd said nothing, but the truth was, he had been 100% focused on her work, digging deeper and deeper. Yet that wasn't the only reason Akira also wanted to understand her more, because he didn't want to be just her younger brother forever. Embarrassed, Toa changed the subject, asking if the stuffed toy was based on a Shih Tzu. Akira confirmed it was. He remembered her once saying she liked that breed. Later, on the way home, the two walked side by side through the subway, unable to look each other in the eye. It was obvious the conversation had reached a very awkward place. Even so, once they stepped out of the station, Toa asked her brother to take another walk with her before going home. During their stroll, she led him to a spot they both loved and told him that tomorrow would mark 10 years since Akira became part of the family. She then gave him a photo album and an MP3 player, a gift he absolutely adored. But that wasn't all. Summoning all her courage, she confessed that she felt the same way he did, reminding him of the conversation they had left unfinished at the cafe. According to her, Akira had become not only a constant presence in her life since they met 10 years ago, but also the very reason she kept moving forward. Over time, she had tried to convince herself that Akira was only her little brother. But the truth was, her heart raced every time they were together. And with that, the boy tore down every barrier. He didn't just tell her he loved her, he asked her to marry him right then and there. Tuasa's first reaction was to let out a scream of sheer shock and surprise. Akira tries to take it back for a moment and explain that it's not exactly what he meant. But since the damage was already done, he turns around and admits that yes, that's exactly what he was saying. Seeing that things are getting serious, Toa doesn't back down and replies that she feels the same way. But they couldn't do it now after all, they're still too young. First, they should at least be in a relationship, maybe even boyfriend and girlfriend. And then, when the right time comes, who knows, maybe they could have a family of their own. The next day, Tajitsu praises Akira for taking such an important step toward the future. Still, she warns him that the real challenge starts now. The boy agrees after all, he has to be there for Tuasa, no matter what happens. Meanwhile, Tuasa slowly finds herself falling for her new friend, Dove. She takes the chance to thank Ikikishima for helping her deal with the whole situation with Akira, since it allowed them to finally move forward. To that, the robot admits she was sick and tired of watching the two of them wasting time. With the machine showing such a human-like attitude, Toa considers calling her a personality artificial instead of just intelligentsia. Speaking of that, Toa finds it ironic that people use AI for everything. But when someone's on the verge of creating an artificial personality indistinguishable from a human being, no one wants it. In response, Ikikishima points out that humans have never been very welcoming to discoveries that might threaten their control over the world. On that note, the scientist asks the AI to review the research script for android development. In the following scene, a reporter is broadcasting live in front of Robotech Omagi, right in the middle of a protest triggered by a shareholders meeting at the company. Inside the auditorium, behind the stage curtain, Akira is struck by the sheer importance of Robotech shareholders, who happen to be world leaders. Tuasa appears at her brother's side and tells him that if she can win over public opinion with this presentation, it'll be a huge step forward for android technology. At that moment, the doctor is called to the stage. She greets the audience and promises to address every question and concern they may have. She then introduces the Life Company project, a plan to take humanity to the next level. By integrating an AI device into the human body through cybernetic technology, people would be able to access artificial intelligence in real time, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Of course, many are worried about the supposed dangers of such an endeavor, but Dr. Amagi reassures them that there will be no problems and that she'll soon explain the details. Right then, a man in the audience rushes the stage, draws a gun, and points it at the scientist, claiming she is committing blasphemy against humanity by creating these robots. Akira bolts toward his sister to protect her. Just as the police arrive to intercept the armed man, shots are fired as Akira tackles Toa to the ground, shielding her with his body. But tragedy strikes. She is hit by a bullet in the stomach, and as the police fail to subdue the assailant, more shots ring out, 3 of them hitting Akira in the back. Collapsing beside the woman he loves, the boy can no longer resist his wounds. His vision fades, his eyes slowly closing as his life slips away. In the next scene, he wakes up naked, bound high up in some ruined technological structure until he manages to break free of the cables and crash to the ground. Somehow, he is alive, with no trace of his gunshot wounds. As he takes in his surroundings, he realizes he is inside a devastated building. Looking through a gaping hole in the wall, he sees the city outside reduced to ruins. While a hooded girl watched Akira Haimgami from afar, the boy began to think this was nothing more than a dream. But when a stone suddenly fell and struck his head, Akira realized the situation was far more real than he'd like it to be. He had no memory of how he ended up there. All he knew was that he'd fallen out of some kind of medical capsule, or whatever that thing was supposed to be. In the middle of all this, a man appeared with his daughter at his side, speaking a strange language and wearing clothes unlike anything Akira had ever seen. Strangely enough, the two of them seemed delighted to see him, And then, for some reason, the man's words began to translate themselves instantly. Called the Sage, Akira understood that an earthquake had caused the ruins to collapse. Concerned, they had come to check on him. The little girl teased that the stranger was naked, and her father quickly apologized for young Idhai's behavior. Right after that, Akira collapsed. The man carried him straight to a cart drawn by oxen. When his daughter asked if the boy would be all right, the driver said he thought Akira would pull through. Eventually, the unconscious boy stirred and woke. Calmer now, he thanked the two strangers for their help, but insisted they must have mistaken him for someone else. His name was Akira Haimdami. At that, the driver called him Lord Akira and introduced himself as Uya, the head of the village just up ahead. The little girl was his daughter, Idhai. Curious, Akira asked who this sage was. Uya explained that the sage was a god venerated by their people, consecrated within those very ruins, a divine being said to grant limitless knowledge to his followers. According to Uya, Akira had been sleeping there since long before he was even born. Their village had been entrusted by Ol to guard that sacred place. Honestly, Uya admitted, he never thought the sage would awaken again. Looking around at the devastation, Akira wondered if this city had been through some kind of war. Suddenly, fragments of memory flickered in his mind, and he remembered Toasa, but he was still far from understanding what had happened. Uya pointed out that they were about to arrive at Hakodate village, a name that struck Akira as familiar. He glanced around and spotted Goryakaku Tower, the very one he had visited on a school trip back in elementary school. Seeing him lost in thought, Uya advised him to ease his mind a little. That seemed wise, so Akira rested his head on the pillow, once again convincing himself that all of this was nothing more than a strange dream. Before long, Uya astonished his wife by bringing home none other than the great sage in the flesh. When Akira woke again, the woman happily announced that their house could serve as his temporary home. Later, their guest shared a meal with the family and some others. He told them about the advanced technologies of his past. From the era known as the Common Age, long, long ago, Uya and his wife could hardly believe how far civilization had once come. Akira then asked how long he had been asleep, but Uya could only admit he had no idea. As simple villagers, they had no access to formal history. Some of the men present remarked that having the sage among them was like possessing a relic, and that they needed to notify Ole, the unified institute that governed the world. Alarmed, Akira asked what had happened to his country, Japan. Uya was surprised by the name. That's what the sage had called the region in those times. In truth, Ole had dissolved all national governments. With their administration, countries no longer existed, and lasting world peace had been achieved. Wars were gone. Shifting the subject, Idhai asked how old Akira was. He replied that he was 18, or at least he had been. He'd stopped counting after falling asleep for what seemed like centuries. Growing impatient, the men pressed Uya to report the sage's return immediately. Otherwise, the whole village could be in danger. If they made the slightest mistake, Ol would make an example out of them, just as they had with others who tried to hide relics. Uya's wife lost her patience and snapped that Akira had only just awakened. He didn't even understand what was happening yet. Couldn't they at least give him some time to get his bearings? Until then, there was no reason for Ol to be told anything, and she would tolerate no more whining until things settled down. Idhai copied her mother's commanding tone, earning herself a gentle pat on the head in return. Meanwhile, the baby who had been sleeping in a cradle woke up crying from all the shouting. His mother scooped him into her arms to soothe him, reassuring Akira at the same time that he could relax, that everything would be fine. That night, Akira was given Idhai's bed while the girl was forced to sleep on the floor. Unable to close his eyes, he thought back to the unusual meal from dinner. It had been delicious, but no matter how he tried, he couldn't fall asleep. Restless, he stepped out onto the second-floor balcony and gazed up at the sky, guessing it must be summer. From there, he looked across the land and noticed many small settlements scattered around the region. Yet despite the view, Haimgami still felt as though he was dreaming, certain that any moment he would wake up and find everything back to normal. Suddenly, the name Tuasa crossed his lips. Where could she be? At that very moment, the hooded girl was still watching from a distance. She spotted a man leaving in the dead of night, riding away on horseback. By morning, Akira washed his face in the well water, determined to face reality. Tuasa might be in danger, and he needed to find her as soon as possible. Searching for clues, he decided to ask Idhai for a little help when she came into sight. In the next scene, the two are at the street market where the little girl's family usually does their shopping. Observing the local customs, Akira supposes that this tribe is culturally comparable to the 18th century in the world he knows. since they even have a circulating currency that suggests someone is guaranteeing its value, probably that old people. Akira asks the short girl if there's a library around, since he needs to learn more about this strange civilization. But the girl has no idea what that would be. When the young man explains that it's like a place where there are lots of books, the native imagines he must mean the school. Right beside them, as the two head toward the school, the hooded girl buys accessories at a stall, always keeping her identity hidden. As soon as he arrives at his destination, Akira notices that none of the books there seem to have relevant information about what he's looking for, especially about this organization called OLE, which makes him imagine that they are censoring certain information. Since that's the case, the boy asks if there's some way to find OLE's top brass. When she hears this question, the little girl storms out of the school, shouting and cursing against those people she hates so much, because to her they're nothing but arrogant fools who only know how to solve everything through violence. Even so, she says those guys are not in the village. Further ahead, the outsider comes across a kind of celebration that he tries to understand, since it looks like a wedding, but there seem to be only women there. The native doesn't know what a wedding is, so she explains that this event is an ALC. When two people love each other enough to make a vow and become sea-ailers. Confused, the guy asks if that's a marriage between women, but Idhai really has no idea what that means. As she already said, this is an ALC, and it has nothing to do with being a man or a woman. In an ALC, there can be several different groups. A man and a woman, two women, two men, or four people, and so on. In this case, what they're seeing is a group of 4 women. Akira comments that it's a little similar to marriage in the society he comes from, where 2 people make a vow and then live together for the rest of their lives. Idhai finds it funny that a person would make vows with only one, when in an ALC you can have more than that. However, it can't be too many people. Otherwise, OLE shows up and puts an end to the mess, tired of that institute's involvement in all the village's affairs. Akira assumes from this that an ALC is like a promise different groups make to live together. Idhai confirms and explains that in her house, the ones who made the ALC were her father, Papa Vok, and her mother, a group of 3. Having said that, the little girl pulls her friend toward another place. In the next scene, we go to the year 2038. When Akira was talking with Toasa about Project LC, which promised to give humans an upgrade, his brother thought it was an interesting idea, but Toa still hadn't found investment to carry the plan forward. About Project LP, Ikikishima said it would be crucial to establish the foundations for the development of androids. And speaking of crucial, that day Akira took an important step in his intention of a relationship with Toasa, so he gave his big sis a ring as a birthday present. On that note, Toa asked him to stop calling her Big Sis. Back to the present moment, sitting with Idhai in a corner of the market. Akira can't stop thinking about the cultural shock of this ALC, and the difference it has from marriage as he knows it. The young man only stops thinking about it when he greets Taberna, who has just arrived with her baby in her arms. Apparently, Taberna needs a hand from her friend. So, the visitor is taken to a motor vehicle that broke down in yesterday's earthquake, to see if he can fix it. Akira notices that the intake valve is bent, so, to everyone's surprise, he shows that he can repair the car and gets the old wreck running again. According to him, he's liked working with machines since he was a kid. In the middle of the crowd's celebration when the vehicle was repaired, the smiles fade from their faces with the arrival of Emissary Canis. Ashamed and with his head down, Wia's partner denounces that the sage is present, pointing directly at Akira Haimgami. At over 2 meters tall, the giant approaches the outsider and crouches down to evaluate him from head to toe. When the young man asks, he introduces himself as Percussus Canis, General Emissary of OLE from the Northern District H427, but says he can be called the all-powerful Commissioner Canis. Seizing Akira, Canis claims the boy is considered an archaeological relic that was improperly unearthed from ancient ruins. Squeezing the boy's head in his hand, the OLE member reminds them that controlling the flow of information is the basis of the organization. Wia asks the emissary not to do that, but Canis isn't interested, and even accuses the villager of being a traitor for not hiding the relic's presence in the village. Using a weapon tied to his wrist, the commissioner fires into the peasant's leg and also orders his guards to detain the father and daughter so they can give their testimony for having found the relic first. Wia argues that he was going to report everything once things calmed down, but Percussus doesn't want to hear any lame excuses. He draws his electric blade and delivers a powerful shock to the civilian's open wound, causing unbearable pain that chills Akira's spine. As if that weren't enough, the aggressor's laughter echoed through the area like a diabolical omen. After controlling the situation, Kenny's throws Akira, Wea, and Idhai into a cell attached to a train, as if it were a wagon. Akira feels guilty for having caused all of this, while Wea reassures the young man, despite the wound in his leg clearly becoming something serious. Upon arriving at the destination, Kenny's ordered his armed men to leave the relic in the cell and bring the other two, since he would soon get rid of them. Speaking of which, the chief sent 3 soldiers back to Hakodate village to kill all the peasants, as he had decided that everyone who knew about the relic's existence must die. In despair, still locked up, Akira called the man a monster. Ignoring the insult, Kenny said it was good that the relic would release all its ancient knowledge and help him rise in rank. That said, when the emissary pointed his weapon at Idhai's head, the hooded woman appeared and smashed Akira's cell with a sword made of true luminous matter, resembling a lightsaber. With unstoppable speed, she subdued Kenny's and delivered a kick that sent the giant flying as if he were just a soccer ball. Badly beaten, the man ordered his soldiers to kill the enemy. Before they could shoot, the mysterious heroine revealed that she somehow knew Akira, but without going into detail, she told the boy to find a safe place to hide. At that, the soldiers opened fire, but the woman activated a shield that deflected the bullets back at the shooters, killing them all. After that, she drew her blade again and destroyed each of the armed opponents scattered around the area, slicing every one of them to pieces without mercy. Running in desperation, Kenny's asked who the hell this wretch was. While the pursuer scorned the officer's cowardice, he who threw his men forward to die instead of himself. At that moment, one soldier was about to shoot the woman, but Akira threw a piece of iron at his head and stopped it from happening. Kenny's took advantage of this moment to grab a minigun on the train and began firing wildly in the direction of his opponent. Now, no matter how skilled she was, the commissioner was certain that no one could escape from a machine gun of that caliber. On the other hand, the mysterious figure showed she was on another level. By activating a weapon hidden in her body, the woman fired at her target and violently disintegrated emissary Kenny's. The shot was so vast and powerful that it struck a mountain in the background and caused a gigantic explosion. After dealing with the problem, the heroine revealed that she was an android called Yugir. However, upon seeing her face, Akira could swear that the person before him was Tawasa. As if that were not enough, the supposed Yugir declared that the two of them should marry. Akira tries to understand what's happening and keep some distance from the girl, but she's far too aggressive and moves toward him with her uncontrollable desire for love. Desperate, the boy begs her to listen, so Yugir takes a step back. But before he can say anything, she shows the ring he gave to Tawasa, which leaves him even more confused. When he asks if Yugir knows his sister, she answers that maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. For Akira, that information is confidential. In the middle of that, Idhai calls out to her friend because her father is hurt. A short time later, when Yugir starts healing Wea, the man from Hakodate village begs for forgiveness for having turned Akira into the authorities. Despite the trouble that caused him, the boy shows remarkable understanding by realizing that the man only wanted to protect the villagers and did what he thought was right. Taberna asks what Akira will do now, and the young man replies that since Ol is after him, staying there would only bring problems, so he has decided to leave the village. At night, he says goodbye to the friends he made there. Wea asks him to visit the village soon and tell more of his stories about the old times. While walking away, Akira asks if Yugir really intends to go with him, and she reminds him that he still hasn't answered whether he will marry her. The boy thought she was joking, but since it's a serious proposal, he refuses, because only a madman would marry someone he just met. In that case, Yugir thinks it's a great idea for them to get to know each other better, since that's the problem. Akira allows her to follow him, as long as she doesn't do anything stupid. The girl then asks if stupid would be something like saving him, like she just did. Obviously, that teasing leaves the man speechless. Putting that aside, the woman would love to know where they are going. So Akira says he's going back to the place where he woke up, to see if he can find any clue about why all this is happening. He asks if Yugir can teach him about the present, since she's an android, but she repeats that this subject is confidential. Since that's the case, he at least asks her to explain why she came up with that talk about marrying him. Yugir replies that this information is only for premium subscribers, and the payment to access it is to marry her. Later, when he reaches the place where everything began, Akira regrets it a bit. After all, it's too dark to see anything clearly. Yugir comments that maybe the earthquake from a few days ago destroyed the power supply, until suddenly something makes the android react immediately. She grabs Akira and forcibly takes him to a safe spot. then tells him to stay quiet and activates a cloaking field to hide them from the people nearby. Armed with a sword, a woman makes a huge leap and breaks through the wall of that structure with a long-range strike. Right after that, another woman with an angelic appearance appears behind her. Yugir recognizes Hakubo and realizes that this is not good at all. The swordswoman asks if any sign of them has been found, and the angel uses her halo to emit a signal that detects any presence hidden by the cloaking ability. Akira notices that the faces of those 3 androids are the same as his sister Toasa's. In the middle of that, the swordswoman senses a presence and brings down part of the wall with her sword, revealing little Idhai, who had been hiding. Akira almost panics, but Yugir assures him that the android won't hurt the child. Before anything else, the swordswoman tells the girl to keep her mouth shut and follow her. Hakubo comments that Yoyami is being a little rude, but her colleague reminds her that this is a serious case. Since Commissioner Canis has been murdered, she asks if the child knows who is responsible, but Idhai refuses to tell, saying that the culprit saved her life. Hakubo feels empathy for the girl's courage, while Yoyami wants to know where the culprits are. Idhai says she doesn't know, so the swordswoman sheathes her katana and leaves with her companion to investigate another area. Akira runs straight to the child to know what she's doing there, and Idhai gives him back the boy's watch, which she had found in those ruins and had forgotten to return when he left. Anxious for some information, Akira turns on the device and opens a message from Toasa to him. Through an audio recording, the woman says, "I've made many mistakes in my life, and these are the sins that haunt me, and I must live knowing that I am responsible for what I've done. In any case, only I can carry this burden. Akira, my love and gratitude for you are eternal. But you must not look for me in any way, just live the life you have now." Yugir says that this message is from 200 years ago, which makes Akira imagine, logically, that his sister has been dead for a long time. But either way, he holds on to the hope that he can still find her. To do that, he decides to go to the Amagi house in Tokyo, which is where he used to live. With that decided, he makes Yugir promise that he can trust her, so that the two can travel to their destination together. As if making wedding vows, the android promises to be by his side in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow. Before continuing the journey, they spend the night nearby to rest. While Idhai sleeps, Akira wants to know who those two were that they encountered earlier. Yugir says they're Yoyami and Hakubo, commanders of Ol's special forces. When asked if the two were after her, Yugir only says that this organization imposed restrictions on digital processing technology. The boy also wants to know if she was part of Ol, and why the 3 androids have the same face. But once again Yugir gives that same line, confidential information. Lastly, Akira insists on knowing why she wants to marry him. So the girl crawls toward her companion and says only that it's because she wants to. Since that's the case, Akira gets angry and says that Toasa is his fiancé. But since the two aren't married yet, Yugir makes it clear that she won't give up. Climbing on top of the boy and holding his arms, she reveals that it's part of her functions to be irresistible. In the end, Akira manages to convince the girl to stop the nonsense, but in exchange, he promises to call her only by her name. Since he used to avoid doing that, when the day breaks, the two leave Idhai near the village, in a safe place for her to return. After that, it's time to cross the sea to Honshu. However, upon arriving at the dock where the boats usually depart, Akira learns from a fisherman that all the vessels are out at sea at this time of year, and the ferry only runs once a week. Nevertheless, the boy gets lucky because a man has just arrived and offers them a ride, since he's going to Aomori anyway. The man's name is Albaro, and he works as a wholesaler. When he asks why the young people are going to Honshu, Yugir lies, saying they're going on their honeymoon to Tokyo. In that case, Albaro thinks it's a good idea for them to take the train from Sendai. But since Akira thinks it's too far, the man suggests that they go through Mount Asor first. Yugir says that's the plan to cross the Mutsu Bridge and head to Aomori, so Akira argues with her, since she knew that all along and let him wander around like a fool. When the trip ends, the supposed couple is dropped off at a pier, and they say goodbye to Mr. Albaro, to justify his kindness in offering the ride. The wholesaler says that humanity is like one big family. Further ahead, Akira notices that this place doesn't look Japanese at all. Distracted, he ends up bumping into a girl who is running, which breaks her brush. While the boy promises to buy another one for her, Yugir notices that this person dropped a book called Heart Bird. The girl politely introduces herself as Amaru, but when the android was about to ask about the book, she grabs it as if she wanted to hide it, saying it's very special to her. Next, Akira goes to a small market and buys some things for 163 dills. Yugir complains that this was the money Wea gave them to cover the travel expenses, but her friend saw no other choice but to spend a part of it. When giving the change, the young clerk gives too much. So the owner of the market, a violent man, physically attacks the worker and justifies his mistake to the customers by saying he was deceived and bought a useless Ledogen on sale. Faced with the situation, Yugir frowns, leaves the entire change for the shopkeeper, and tells her friends to leave. Outside, Akira asks what a Ledogen is, and the android explains that it's a group of people who voluntarily gave up their own human rights in exchange for being pardoned for some crime or debt. Under Ol's administration, Ledogens are traded to perform several kinds of services and receive food and shelter so they won't be at risk of dying. Akira lowers his head and remarks that this is nothing more than slavery. So the girl replies that he has a very soft heart and that this could be a problem when Ol starts knocking on the door. Leaving that aside, the boy gives Amoru a new brush. She asks why they came to Oma, and they tell her that this is the first stop on a trip to Tokyo. But since it's still far away, they're going to pass through Mount Osor first. The local girl doesn't think it's a good idea, since Ol has a checkpoint on the main road going there unless they let her show them an alternative route to skip that checkpoint. And so, Amoru leads the two along this secret road so they can continue their journey to the mountain. Along the way, she shows impressive talent by drawing Yugir's face while walking. With every stroke she makes on the paper, Akira can only see Tuasa. He asks if the girl wants to be an artist when she grows up, and she confesses that she'd love to draw storybooks. When the boy assures her she has talent for it, Amoru walks ahead, embarrassed, and Yugir then notices that she has a strange mark on her back. When night falls, the trio fills their stomachs with a rabbit that luckily for the other two the android was there to hunt. By the way, Akira asks if she refuels through food, and she replies that her core generates energy on its own and that she eats only because she likes to. The man gets curious, thinking it's nuclear fusion, and ends up almost touching the girl's chest by accident. But before he does, she makes it clear that he'll have to deal with the consequences of that action. Quickly, Akira steps back, realizing he was too distracted. Changing the subject about that book Amoru hid earlier, Yugir assumes it's a banned one but promises not to steal it. So, even though she's hesitant, the girl shows the object and explains that her parents wrote it, since they're story writers, and that this is one of their tales. Yugir admires how the bird was drawn, while Akira hopes the daughter will be able to follow in her parents' footsteps as an artist. Seeing that the two liked the book, the young artist is happy, despite her shyness. The next day, they arrive at Mount Osor. But since there's an old guard at the entrance, Yugir is forced to hide her face with a hood, which ends up working. After all, as she tells her companions, she's had to hide her identity this way from the authorities for 150 years. Now, one thing that wasn't hidden in this process was the sound of the android's stomach growling, even though she doesn't feel hunger. For some reason, her stomach seems to disagree. Anyway, it's her lucky day, because the village of Mount Osor is known for its great street food stalls. Right after placing their order, while the robot devours an entire skewer in a single bite, Akira looks around and laments that the Ledogens are so exploited and abused wherever they are. Before anything else, Yugir suggests that her companion shouldn't stick his nose where it doesn't belong. But the boy can't help pointing out that the way those people are treated isn't right. The android explains that the values of a society change over time, and when her friend is about to argue back, he realizes that the clever girl has eaten his skewer, so he has to go buy another one. However, as soon as he stands up, the boy is stopped by armed old men who use the relic as a hostage to force the android to surrender. Once the men have the situation under control, a man appears, calling himself the Magnificent Marlum, claiming to be the brilliant mind behind the plan. According to him, he received a message from his cousin Kani about the appearance of a relic and had to see it with his own eyes. As for Yugir, since the android has the same face as Hakubo and Yoyami, he immediately figured out it was her. That said, Amoru apologizes to the two outsiders and goes to the old commander, making it clear that she was the one who turned them in. Calling the girl number 1221, the officer mocks the couple for having fallen for a Ledogen story. At that moment, Amoru confesses that she lied to Akira and Yugir because they promised to return to her the books her parents had written if she handed them over. By the way, the girl demands her reward, but Marlum reveals that he burned every last page of them. Then he throws her to the ground and orders his soldiers to give her the same treatment her parents received. As for the android, he commands that she be taken to the station. However, Amoru reacts and creates a distraction, which gives Yugir the chance to take Akira away. Left behind, the Letojin takes a hard kick to the ribs, and with the blow, the old officer discovers her banned book. After being taken to a safe place, Akira runs back to save Amaru, but Yugir stops him. According to her, it's against her operating principles to interfere in that situation. Besides, that girl lied to them. Still, Akira insists on helping her. After all, he feels bad for having treated the girl's dream as something silly, when in reality, it's the reason she lives. And speaking of that, without mercy, Marlum grabs the Book of the Heart's Bird and sets it on fire right in front of Amaru, who starts crying desperately. On the other hand, Yugir ends up agreeing to help as long as Akira marries her. Disappointed, the boy breaks free from the woman and runs after the captured Letojin. Hours later, Amaru was locked inside a cell, missing her parents more than ever in that painful moment. But keeping his word, after knocking out the guard at the door, Akira managed to steal the key, break into the cell, and free his friend from there. Meanwhile, Yugir was quietly watching the prison from a distance. Outside the cell, the Letojin girl tried to understand why she was being helped. After all, she had lied to get the boy in trouble. Akira, on the other hand, acted as if it were his duty to save a partner, even one who had made such a grave mistake. In the middle of their argument, the prison alarm went off, and to make matters worse, one of the guards spotted them. Akira grabbed Amaru's hand and ran, but at the next corner, they came face to face with another soldier. The guard reached for his electric baton, but Akira, already holding the one he'd stolen from the previous enemy, was quicker. He threw it straight at his target, knocking the man out of the fight. With the path now clear, the two finally found the exit and escaped from the prison. However, the magnificent Marlum was one step ahead. He had foreseen this and set up a small squad of soldiers to corner the fugitives at the gate. Two soldiers grabbed Amaru from behind, and when Akira rushed to save her, another man struck him from behind with an electric baton. Disappointed that the android had managed to escape, Marlum consoled himself with the thought that at least he'd get to keep the relic. But in a quick, clever move, Akira used his own baton to hit the guard restraining him, breaking free just long enough to rush toward the emissary and demand that he release Amaru. The old officer, disgusted that a commoner had dared to touch him, was consumed with rage and ordered his men to beat the boy senseless, fearing for her friend's life. Amaru begged them to stop and promised to do whatever they wanted if they just let him go. Even so, Akira insisted that she must not give up, because if she did, she would never find her parents' storybooks again, and she would never become the artist she had always dreamed of being. Hearing those words, the young girl felt her heart tremble. Her dream had just been recognized, right in the middle of all that chaos. Ironically, Marlum found the scene adorable, amused by how sweet the boy was being to a mere slave. But since he needed to finish what he had started, he ordered a soldier to aim a strange-looking device at the girl's head. Akira panicked, while Amaru, accepting her fate, stayed strangely calm, silent, with tears streaming down her face. At the very last second, Yugir arrived just in time to stop her supposed ally from being killed. With unstoppable speed and strength, the android threw herself into the middle of the soldiers, taking down all three who were restraining Amaru. Despite that overwhelming display of power, Marlum actually celebrated her arrival. To him, it meant he could kill 3 birds with 1 stone, or so he thought. The android was not an opponent to be underestimated. With barely any effort, she defeated 2 guards who tried to fight her hand to hand, then destroyed the rifles of the last 3 who had been shooting from afar, sending them running in terror. Disgusted by his useless subordinates, Marlum grabbed a rifle himself, determined to end it personally. But Yugir blocked his burst of gunfire with an energy shield, then kicked him so hard he crashed through a window straight into a prison bathroom, headfirst into a toilet. With the situation handled, Amaru gazed in awe at the absolute power of that magnificent android. Akira, half serious, asked what had happened to her operational principles. Yugir explained calmly that she had concluded rescuing Amaru aligned with her ultimate mission. Therefore, it was a logical decision, just as any android would make. Akira found the explanation a little questionable, but decided to let it go and simply thank her for the brilliant help at the right time. Hours later, as dawn began to break, Amaru was exhausted from walking so much. Yugir tried to cheer her up, saying they were almost in Aomori, and handed her the bag with her belongings found back in the prison's administrative office. Without wasting a second, Amaru changed out of her prisoner's clothes and back into her usual outfit, forcing Akira to turn away fast before being accused of anything inappropriate. Noticing the marks and bruises on the girl's back, The android used some kind of ability that made all those horrible wounds disappear. Amazed by the miracle, Akira asked how on earth she'd done it. Yugir gave her usual reply that it was classified, but whispered to Amaru that she had only used a mechanism already present in the human body. Since she could do that, Amaru asked if her friend could also remove the Ledogen mark from her waist. Yugir warned that it would hurt, prompting Akira to ask if there was another way. But Amaru was completely determined she wanted it gone now, tired of that ugly tattoo on her body. So Yugir used a technique to remove it, causing a brief burning sensation, but nothing unbearable. In its place, the android etched the mark of the bird her parents had created, a beautiful tribute to the art Amaru loved so deeply. Overwhelmed with emotion, Amaru began to cry and decided to set off on a journey with her two companions to find her parents' books and to keep drawing along the way, so that one day she could become a storyteller as great as they were. With that in mind, she announced that the three of them should perform the ALC together. Before anything else, Akira, knowing what that meant, told her to put some clothes on first. Once she did, he made it clear that she was free to go wherever she wanted. So Amaru turned to Yugir and asked if she was okay with one more person joining the trip. The android answered that they were all in this adventure together. When Akira smiled and said it was good to have her by his side, Yugir gave him a sharp look and asked if, by any chance, he was planning to commit adultery. After some time had passed, the trio arrived in Aomori. An innkeeper noticed the travelers' arrival and offered them a room at her lodge, and Akira saw in that the perfect chance to finally take a good bath. On the other hand, Yugir noticed the presence of heavily equipped guards around the area. Amaru believed that it was because of this year's Fika season, a famous festival where people look for their ALC partners. However, of course, that event had nothing to do with the three of them, since they were already committed according to the girl, who said that while holding Akira's hand. In turn, Yugir said she agreed and grabbed the man's other hand, emphasizing that the two of them were going to get married. Faced with that unexpected pressure, the man made it very clear that he wasn't going to get married or do an ALC, whatever that was, and that both of them were very mistaken. As he had already made very clear before, his heart was already taken, and the woman who had captivated him had a name, Toasa Omagi. In fact, the main reason for this journey was precisely to find her. Therefore, Amaru thought it was a great idea for them to find that woman soon so the four of them could do the ALC together. Yugir, however, resentful about it, said she would look for other men in her life, and that if she didn't feel anything for them, then she would be sure that her feelings for Akira were real. Following the same thought, Amaru didn't want to see her feelings being questioned for no reason. So both women decided to take part in Aomori's Fika season. At night, during a secret meeting on a secluded dock, after receiving a large sum of money, Lieutenant Colonel Yamabuki said he expected nothing less from Calcram, the aspiring head of the Lontano family. In response, Calcram assured him that he couldn't have paid less after all. The unregistered equipment from Ole's Tokyo headquarters was always top of the line, because of the amount of weapons the man had purchased. The colonel asked if he was about to start a war, and Calcram answered that he could never be too prepared for the one that was coming. Having said that, he thanked the lieutenant colonel and the emissary who had mediated that deal. Yamabuki commented that, according to what he had heard, Calcram had a new rival. But before he could finish his reasoning, he was surprised by the arrival of an armed group from Miss Fides, the eldest daughter of the Lontano family. Fides herself appeared last and apologized for the sudden intrusion, but said she had to intervene the moment she learned that her guests were in danger. The colonel asked what kind of nonsense that was, and the woman explained that a rat had infiltrated her younger brother's men, and that it was her duty to apologize for Calcram's carelessness, since she would be the future head of the family. Pointing a gun at Fides' group, a gangster named Brasso said that was absurd because Lord Calcram would be their leader. The tension began to rise with the argument, and everything reached its peak when the rat broke free from the man who was holding him and grabbed a knife to attack the eldest daughter of the Lontano family. At that point, Fides' men raised their weapons to shoot, but Calcram himself killed the rebel to calm what could have turned into a bloodbath. After saying that he had his own plans, Calcram grabbed the old emissary's wrist and hinted that she was the other infiltrated rat. Seeing the lieutenant colonel's confusion, the mobster explained that he had kept it secret to prevent the snitch from running away. But according to what he had found out, it seemed that this woman loved diverting funds that, for some reason, were lining the colonel's pockets. After that, Fides left the place so her brother could take care of the rest of the matter. A man there seemed surprised that those two were relatives, and another corrected him, saying that, actually, they were half-siblings. There had been almost 10 Lontano children, but after a blood feud and internal dispute, only 2 were left. Apparently, the head of the family's strategy had been to make lots of heirs and have them fight each other. Then, the winner of that pseudo-Italian Hunger Games would be considered the new head of the organization. The problem was that, since there was no new generation yet, the Lontanos were getting rather nervous and would probably put the continuity of the bloodline at risk if they didn't do the ALC soon. Speaking of which, after all that confusion, at a dinner table in the Lontano mansion, the father of Fides and Calcram lamented that their number had been reduced so much over the years. Even so, trust was everything to him. So both of them had to prove through their actions that they were worthy of taking over the family leadership. Therefore, Calcram asked if they would be able to take part in the festival, and the father believed that it was of utmost importance to continue the Lontano lineage. Fides then promised that she would find a partner and follow in her father's footsteps, and her brother teased her, telling her not to get hurt like last time. The woman found that amusing, since the man hadn't even been capable of killing an insect when they were children. The next day, Akira woke up very late and got scolded by his 2 traveling companions, since they wanted to eat something quickly and go to the Fika festival. Akira, on the other hand, didn't care at all about that and told them to go on their own, which they did, even if reluctantly. While getting some fresh air at the hotel entrance, Akira overheard 2 people saying that Fides and Calcram would be taking part in the event, the 2 potential heroes of the Lontano family. Akira wondered what that family was, so the innkeeper explained that the Lontanos ran the city, the kind of people who didn't mind getting their hands dirty if necessary. Realizing that this meant they were the local mafia, the boy began to worry about his friends. Speaking of them, Amaru and Yugir were already taking part in the festival and meeting suitors separately. At one of the tables, after telling her story, Amaru heard from other people that this Akira guy was the villain of the story, and that he had kind of tried to stop her from joining the Fika. But despite everything, the girl couldn't forget the boy and still defended him in front of the possible ALC suitors. Nearby, being as calculating as the robot she is, Yugir avoids any decent interaction with the people around her, which, according to herself, even though it makes things much harder, is not really a problem. Curiously, the android's coldness drives her suitors crazy. Akira has just arrived and notices that everything is pretty calm, so calm that he thinks maybe he didn't even need to come until he sees a group of love-struck women screaming the name of the handsome Calcram, one of the heirs of the Lontano family. At the same time, Fides expects to find her partner at the festival, but she rejects each candidate in seconds, with the snap of a finger. After turning down dozens of possibilities, her right-hand man asks if it's really necessary for the boss herself to perform the ALC, since he will remain loyal to her forever, even if she doesn't. Fides explains that she must do it to become the leader of the Lontano family, because it's required that the leadership leaves a successor after death. Surrounded by women, Calcram mocks his sister's lack of suitors. She, in turn, explains that she has standards unlike certain people. About that, Calcram believes there's a difference between being demanding and not knowing what you want, and, in his case, he knows very well what he wants and is willing to do whatever it takes to reach that goal. Fides' henchmen go on alert after that veiled threat, but tired of the same old talk, the boss herself decides to take a walk alone to clear her head. Meanwhile, Akira notices from afar that, even being an android, Yugir somehow managed to get drunk on wine. At that moment, Amaru finds the boy and gets excited, thinking he came back because he was worried about her. In the meantime, the boy ends up losing sight of the android. As night falls, Fides is drinking alone, thinking about what love really means at an event like this, until Akira walks by and accidentally bumps into her wine glass, staining her dress. Quickly, he apologizes and asks if people still have oxygen bleach at this time to remove stains, realizing he has bothered one of the mafia bosses. The boy gets desperate to run away, but intrigued by this talk about time periods coming from such a young boy, Fides forces him to have a conversation. Amaru sees that and, furious at the woman's attitude, yells that Akira never did anything wrong, and that he only knows all those things because he's a relic from ancient times. Even more curious, Fides asks how a human could still be alive after 200 years, and he answers that it was thanks to a technology called suspended animation, where he woke up after an earthquake caused the device to malfunction. Having confirmed some suspicions, Fides simply states that she wants to perform the ALC with the boy. and Akira wonders why women nowadays are so forward. Thinking that the relic might be hunted by Owl, the Lontano woman makes him a proposal. If Akira agrees to do the ailsi, she will protect him. The boy asks where love fits into this story, and she replies that this feeling loses its importance when you have certain things to command. However, Fides runs off when someone shouts that Calcrom seems to have found an ideal partner. Seeing that, Akira asks if that's the guy she wants to perform the ailsi with, which leaves the mafiosa clearly flustered, trying to justify in every possible way that she's not in love with that man. Besides, it's forbidden to perform the ailsi with blood relatives, and the head of the family would never allow it. Meanwhile, Calcrom kneels before a seriously drunk Yugur and invites her to perform the ailsi. After the event, in the inn-room, Amuro asked if Yugur was going to accept Ailsi's invitation, since she had said she wanted to marry Akira, thinking the girl had no idea what getting married meant. The android explained that marriage is a social, romantic, and financial relationship established between a man and a woman. Amuro thought it sounded kind of complicated to have feelings for just one person, and wondered what happens if you start liking someone else. Yugur assured her she only had eyes for Akira, but unfortunately, it seemed he also only had eyes for one woman, just not her. Despite a bit of resentment, the robot felt admiration for the way the boy handled things. The next day, Lontano found out that his son had found a partner to perform the ailsi at the previous day's festival, so he expected him to make a child as soon as possible to secure the family's future. Meanwhile, Fides vented to Kenshin, her horse, that the whole town was spreading rumors about her brother's relationship, as if the union between him and his supposed bride had already been decided, which wasn't true. At that moment, the mob boss's right-hand man arrived to ask about yesterday, and the boss assured him that she had found her own partner. Speaking of which, Yugur decided to tell her companions that she had a date scheduled with Calcrom. Obviously, Akira and Amuro thought it was a terrible idea, but the android preferred to accept just to have a reference of what this kind of involvement meant in practice. By the way, Calcrom appeared at the inn's door with a big bouquet of flowers to celebrate the occasion, and with a smile on his face, he handed it to his lady. Analyzing the daisies in the bouquet, the woman asked if they meant true love, and Calcrom replied that he wouldn't expect anything less from an android. Akira and Amuro were extremely worried when they found out that the mobster knew she was an android, so the boy asked what he really intended with this whole story. Calcrom was about to answer, but stopped mid-sentence when he realized he was standing in front of someone he recognized. Ironically, Yugur explained that this guy was her fiancé, so Akira hurried to deny it before he ended up burned in a pile of tires. Despite what the woman said, the man kept a cold and relaxed expression, which instantly reminded Akira of Fides. In other words, it ran in the family. Speaking of the devil, Fides appeared at the inn to pick up her beloved. Akira asked where they were going, since he had no idea, and she explained that this was going to be a date, of course, since they were ailsi partners. Hearing that, Yugur and Amuro rushed toward the guy to demand explanations. While Calcrom suggested they should all go out together, that way they could spy on their respective enemies. When the mobster showed his car, Akira and his friends were left with their jaws dropped, and he explained that he had a bit of influence inside Ol. So every kind of supply and intelligence came directly from Tokyo to him, like that vehicle. Upon hearing that name, Akira asked him everything he knew about Tokyo, but Calcrom didn't think he should give that kind of information away for free. However, he assured them he might say one thing or another if the trip turned out to be fun. With no way out, Akira got into the car, and Calcrom announced the start of the double date plus Amuro's presence. After their first stop, impressed, Amuro ran ahead like a child, while a man in a suit watched the couples from afar. Akira asked where they were, and Fides said this was the shopping district. Yugur's eyes caught a necklace from a stall, and her partner revealed there was a great variety of gems to explore in that place, and that this one would fit his beloved perfectly, so he wanted to give it to her as a gift. When Calcrom noticed Akira staring straight at him, he smiled in a mocking yet charming way, while Fides wanted to know if something was distracting the boy. Losing patience with his behavior, the woman threw 3 shopping boxes onto Akira's lap and said there were still more stops to make. As she walked ahead, Amuro said her friend shouldn't have accepted the invitation to this date, but he reminded her that this member of the Lontano family must have a lot of valuable information. Besides, he couldn't let Yugur go alone with that guy. Noticing that Fides only had eyes for Calcrom, Akira thought it must be allowed for siblings to perform the ailsi, which didn't exactly make him comfortable, but what could he say? since he himself was in something similar with his sister back on Earth. Thinking the man was checking out Fides, Amaru shoved her lollipop into his mouth as revenge, while the mob boss called out to her partner as if he were her servant. On the other side, keeping an eye on the situation, Yugir took Kalkrom aside to complain that this double date had been a terrible idea. The man thought the robot just wanted to make her supposed fiancé jealous, although he himself didn't know his sister had invited Akira to an ALC. By the way, Yugir pointed out that Fides was now her #1 enemy. But her partner said that, despite everything, it looked like their plan was working. Yugir even agreed that it was, just as the man had said the night before. After the festival, while drinking from a wine bottle until late at night, the robot couldn't contain her emotions, if we can call them that. When Kalkrom accidentally stumbled into her and asked if she was okay, she stood up with all the fury in the world and shouted, "Do I look okay to you?" What followed was a show of frustration and venting from the woman, who, after talking too much, ended up revealing that she was an android, imagining that this was the reason why the man she loved didn't love her back. Besides being shocked to see an android in a place like that, Kalkrom also couldn't understand how that robot was capable of using words like true love in such a natural and emotional way. For that reason too, he became interested enough in her story to want to know more about what it was all about. From that moment on, he thought that maybe Yugir and Akira needed to spice up their relationship a bit to see if things would finally move forward. Yugir questioned what the guy wanted with that fake ALC proposal, and he confessed that he was just curious to see what would come out of a relationship between a human and an android, since, in his mind, that was unreal. But if the robot could prove otherwise, he would like to see with his own eyes a pair of fools putting into practice what they called true love. In the middle of that, seeing that Amaru couldn't take her eyes off a box of paints, Akira played the nice guy and bought the set for the girl, who was extremely grateful. On the other hand, his partner on that date wondered if she wasn't going to get anything. Then, when turning the corner and spotting the couple, Yugir saw her beloved giving a flower to Fides, so she made sure to show all her dissatisfaction up close to Akira. Taking the date a little more seriously, Akira suggested they go to a library. Of course, the trick was that he wanted to give the meeting a more cultured atmosphere. However, his real intention was to learn more about that world, while Amaru saw it as a chance to maybe find her parents' storybook. Without delay, the boy found the city's code of laws and got interested in the content. However, Fides warned beforehand that the laws there were absolutely useless after all. If Ol said the sky was green, then it had never been blue. When leaving the library, Amaru ran ahead again, forcing the others to chase her so they wouldn't lose the girl. In the middle of that mess, while looking for the runaway alone, Fides wondered how she had gone from mafia heiress to babysitter. Taking a break, that game of hide and seek reminded her of when she used to play like that with her brother during childhood. At that time, Kalkrom was a crybaby, while Fides was a more mature girl who promised to protect the boy when she became the head of the family. By coincidence, when she opened her eyes and came back to real life, the woman came face to face with her brother, who, curiously, was also remembering when they used to play hide and seek as kids. In fact, Fides remembered that not long after childhood, they stopped talking. Akira was searching for Amaru nearby and ended up seeing the siblings arguing at the next corner, so he hid to watch the scene without being noticed. Using the memory of hide and seek, Kalkrom said that his sister had always been too good at it, and he recalled old times by wrapping her in a sheet, just like they used to do years ago. Clearly too emotional for that warm moment, the woman turned her back and walked away before that could turn into something they couldn't control. From that moment on, it became clearer than water to Akira that there was something between those two. Speaking of which, when he saw that Yugir had a new necklace, the man couldn't hide his displeasure, so he frowned and asked what that accessory meant. That reaction was the happiest thing in the android's life, as she could now throw it in his face that he was jealous. Akira replied that even if he were, Yugir would never understand what love is, so she got angry and reminded him that she was only on that awful date to learn what that feeling means. In fact, Yugir and Amaru asked if the guy wasn't also going to end up with that Fides woman, and he reminded them once again that he was already engaged to Tawasa. Later, the couples got back in the car to continue the ride, but one of the tires went flat. While Akira changed the tire, Kalkrom was really intrigued by the fact that he knew how to do that after all. A Lontano heir only needs to learn one thing since birth, to dedicate his life to the family, and that includes this ALC thing. By the way, the boy asked if the mafioso really liked Yugir, and he answered that she was, in fact, interesting. Kalkrom asked why he was asking, imagining that maybe he had an interest in the android. So Akira hinted back, asking about Lontano and his sister Fides. Then the boy dropped a nut under the car and bent down to get it, while Calcrom asked how Akira felt about Fides, saying that he would bless whoever became her partner. As he said that, the man lightly kicked the jack that was holding up the car, making Akira rush out from under the vehicle in desperation. Then Calcrom added that, on the other hand, he was willing to kill anyone who broke his sister's heart. Meanwhile, the three women went for a walk while the men changed the tire. At every moment, Yugir showed a genuine concern about finding her true love and a great frustration for only failing so far. Fides, on the other hand, acting as if she were the robot in the story, didn't believe in that tale at all, since she had been raised her whole life to be the cold heir of a bloody throne. Suddenly, a dock container almost fell on a worker, but Yugir quickly dashed forward to stop it from happening, showing impossible speed and strength for a mere human. Seeing that, Fides was certain that person was an android, and since androids can't have children, she wondered what Calcrom wanted with that woman. Then, when Akira and Calcrom came running toward the noise, Fides ran away without thinking, giving in to the feelings she couldn't express about her brother. One day, in their childhood, after the girl tried to act like the good one, her brother lost his patience and threw it in her face that he had seen her terrified of some difficult and scary things, and had already heard her say that she didn't want to be the head of the family. That's why he himself would become the boss and change the fate of the Lontano family so that his sister wouldn't have to cry anymore. When Akira caught up with Fides, she admitted that Calcrom would be a better boss than her, because, despite appearances, he was a charismatic, intelligent guy with a big heart. Within their family, a child who doesn't fit the profile of a leader is automatically thrown to the wolves, and the rule among the siblings has always been rivalry between themselves. However, Calcrom secretly protected and took care of everyone, even finding jobs for his brothers and helping them whenever he could. Still, Fides believes she should be the one in charge because leading the Lontano family is a very painful task for a sweet boy like her brother. Meanwhile, after seeing Yugir save the worker at the dock, one of the Lontano agents tells the head of the family that an android from Ol was seen in action. Since his son recently bought equipment from that organization, Lontano believes Calcrom is directly involved in the case, so he sets out to settle the matter. Back to the couples, Calcrom closes the family restaurant just so they can finish the evening together. Taking the chance, the mobster asks if Yugir is going to form the ALC with him. Akira and Amoru hold their breath from the tension, and when Fides stands up to speak, Yugir herself makes it clear that she was wrong in trying to validate her love in such a strange meeting, when in fact she has realized that she needs to find true love in her own way, since her friend brought up that subject. Akira takes the opportunity to ask Fides and Calcrom to talk about what they really feel, but the meeting is interrupted by Lontano. Accompanied by dozens of armed men, the head of the family sees his children together like that and confirms his suspicions that the two have always had a certain chemistry, then accuses them of planning to be together and have no children, so that they could kill their father and take over the leadership. In addition, Lontano accuses Calcrom of having bought that android on Ol's black market and of hiding this information from him. Seeing that things are about to get ugly, Akira looks at the only person there who could save them. But Yugir was practically in a relationship with a bottle. She was so drunk. Calcrom explains that the weapons were bought only as a precaution, and the android ended up being included in all that, since she thought her brother wanted to go to war against her. Fides feels relieved. Either way, it's time to solve the situation. So Lontano throws a revolver to Fides and orders her to kill her brother to finally become the head of the family. Calcrom tells her to go ahead, because otherwise, they'll both be killed. Extremely tense, Fides holds the gun tightly until Akira stands up and asks her not to do it. In the meantime, Calcrom himself grabs the revolver from his sister's hand and shoots his father, but ends up hitting a gangster who was standing in front of him. Because of that, Lontano orders his men to kill everyone except for the android, taking advantage of the fact that she's drunk. At that point, tired of all that damned noise, Yugir starts a detoxification procedure in her body to remove the alcohol's effect. According to her, even robots have the right to let loose once in a while, and since Lontano and his men decided to ruin that moment, they will all pay for it. Suddenly, Akira notices a sniper hidden in the corner of the hall. Seeing that he's about to shoot the robot, the human steps in front of her and ends up taking the bullet in his back. Calcrom reacts immediately, shooting the sniper in the forehead, while the boy's bullet wound begins to bleed heavily, and even though his vision grows blurrier by the second and the pain is unbearable, All he worries about is whether Yugir got hurt. While healing her companion, the android analyzes every enemy present in that room, then asks Amaru to take care of Akira so she can handle the situation. With great difficulty, Akira asks her not to kill Lontano, which Yugir finds intriguing, since that man is trying to kill the boy. Either way, the robot tells Kalkrom to step back, because things are about to get serious. The man tells her to be careful, since his father has gone up to the top floor, pressing knives against people's throats. So, Yugir launches a few robotic spheres into the air. They open like winged insects and fire lasers that destroy most of the gangsters. A gunfight breaks out, and Lontano attacks Yugir directly with a sword, claiming that she will obey his orders. The android asks why she would obey someone who hurt a person she cares about. Besides, Kalkrom and Fides would be disappointed if she surrendered so easily. That said, Yugir grabs the enemy's blade with her own hand, breaks it in half, and delivers 2 kicks that send the mobster flying. After that, she leaves it to the man's children to decide what to do with their father, then immediately goes to take care of Akira. Kalkrom reminds his sister that they should show they're fit to be the family's successors through their actions, and that's exactly what he intends to do as he prepares his revolver. In the next scene, we go to a mountain, where Toasa Omagi is working in her room with a golden titanium alloy. Ikikishima, the scientist's robotic assistant, warns that she's been working non-stop for 27 hours and should take a break. But Toa insists she's almost done. By the way, she asks Ikikishima if she thinks machines can have feelings for a human. The robot says she likes her owner, but that's not what Toa means. She's talking about something deeper, thinking the conversation is about love and deeper emotions. The robot answers that she doesn't possess feelings. Toa says she hopes that one day Ikikishima will truly understand, then writes on her wall the question, "New material?" Next, we return to Akira, who wakes up in bed and notices Yugir bothering him in an awkward way. In fact, the android was tying a lucky charm around his ankle to speed up his recovery, a charm that matches hers and comes from an older model of androids made as couples. Akira touches his chest, noticing the scar, but the pain is completely gone. He asks how long he was asleep, and then Amaru runs into the room and hugs him tightly when she sees he's awake. She tells him he was out cold for an entire week, until Fides and Kalkrom arrive to ask how he's doing. Akira replies that he feels surprisingly well, and Amaru whispers in his ear that it's because Yugir took really good care of him. The boy thanks the android, who blushes. Kalkrom gives the injured boy a fruit and apologizes for dragging him into the Lontano family's business. Speaking of that, Akira wants to know what happened after he passed out, and the siblings explain that their father went into forced retirement after suffering a humiliating defeat in front of everyone, and he didn't cause any trouble afterward. After discussing it, they decided that Fides will be the new leader of the family, and Kalkrom will provide support. With that, they believe they can change the Lontano family forever. Later, gathered at the Lontano mansion, Amaru complains that she still hasn't found her parents' books, and Yugir reminds her that she's in a mafia boss's office, not a library. Kalkrom mentions hearing that Akira is heading to Sendai, and he confirms it. He and Fides recommend that he visit a resort, since there's a hot spring town called Nutur along the way. Akira says he needs to reach Tokyo as fast as possible, but his travel companions look at him and make it clear that they'd love to stop by a hot spring, which makes the girls very happy. Then, Kalkrom thanks Yugir, saying that he and his sister are different people now because of her. He asks if she has found her true love, and when she says she doesn't know yet, he tells her she still has all the time in the world and that the most important things eventually reveal themselves in our lives. The next day, inside a car with his group, Akira asks what the hell Oboro is doing behind the wheel. Cheerfully, the man says his last expedition as a trader wasn't very profitable these days. The way to make money is by being a private driver. He adds that he can smell ALC in the air, which immediately makes Amaru like him. Yugir, however, says she's not doing any ALC, she's getting married instead. Faced with that disagreement, the driver bursts out laughing, saying this argument will definitely be talked about later. A bit later, the group reaches a bus stop where there's a map of Nutur beside it. As thanks for his service, Amaru gives Oboro a drawing of his face that she made herself, and the man points out that the girl will be a great storyteller one day. After the driver leaves, Akira wonders how he even knew that about Amaru. When they finally arrive in Nutur, the girls couldn't be happier, admiring the natural beauty of the place, and even the smell of sulfur gets Akira excited about what's coming next. Nearby, two women are arguing about something while a man tries to calm them down. But since he's too talkative and says the wrong things like how two such beautiful ladies shouldn't be fighting, the two get angry at him too. Akira approaches the trio, for some reason, and ends up getting punched in the face when the real target dodges the hit. Because of that, the woman who hit him gets some ice for him and apologizes 1,000 times for punching him right in the face. Akira asks if the man in the trio is the playboy who broke the hearts of maidens, but he explains that's not the case. In truth, he's just a guest there, someone who couldn't turn a blind eye to the little disagreement between the ladies. The woman acknowledges that this gentleman was only trying to break up the fight, and he introduces himself as Yokireta. The woman, in turn, is Akisai, owner of Kiji no Yu. Akira asks how the argument began, and Akisai explains that Hanayama is her ALC partner, as well as an OL commissioner who's always busy. When the two decided to be together, Hanayama promised to quit her job at OL to help Akisai with the inn, but she ignored that promise and kept working there. As a result, she's always busy, never comes home, and even stood Akisai up on her birthday more than once. Changing the subject, as a way to apologize to the boy she punched, Akisai offers him a free room. Then Amoru pops up to comment that it was worth it for the guy to get hit. The owner of the establishment leads the group to the Azalea room, whose wonderful view makes Amoru's eyes shine. According to the hostess, that room is the great pride of Kiji no Yu, along with the inn's famous mixed bath. Yugir and Akira die of embarrassment at that, while Amoru rubs her hands together at the thought of bathing with both of them. Speaking of which, the owner claims her baths have a Cupid-like effect, and many visitors who enter the spring together end up becoming couples. According to Yugir, it seems that this hot spring grants the blessing of destiny. Speaking of that, Akisai asks if the three of them are together in an ALC, and Akira replies that they're not and don't plan to be. Amoru argues that they should, while Yugir insists they should get married, acting like a stubborn child. The man sits on the floor with his arms crossed and says there's no way that's happening, not marriage, not an ALC, and definitely not a shared bath. So Amoru gives up on the guy and calls Yugir to enjoy the water with her. During the bath, the short girl comments that Akira can be a real pain sometimes. Yugir agrees, but she seems down, so her friend goes over to talk and understand what's going on. Yugir admits that lately, every time she looks at that boy, she feels a strange tightness in her chest. In the sauna after the bath, Amoru wonders if the android might be in love, since she read in a book that it's common for our hearts to race when we think of someone special. However, she notes that Yugir never says she loves Akira. The robot replies that she always does, but knows that's not true. In turn, the little girl says she loves Akira and Yugir very much. So much that she'd love to form an ALC and stay with both of them forever. Later, Akira finds a map of Tohoku on the wall. It's been a while since he woke up in the future, but he still has more questions than answers. Yugir arrives asking if something's bothering him, but he's not in the mood for another. This matter is confidential. Yugir grumbles that she doesn't say that because she wants to, but ends up repeating the same phrase when the human asks what's happening to this world. He asks why she was created, and the android gives the same answer. Then, when the boy brings up Toasa Amagi, Yokireta hears the name. After sending away the two women he had been flirting with, the man says he used to work for OL a long time ago, and that's where he heard about Professor Amagi. Akira and Yugir give him suspicious looks, but he promises he no longer has any connection with OL, and that he's now just a harmless academic. Moreover, speaking quietly, he assures them he was never the type to hand over androids to the organization. Akira realizes the man already knows about Yugir, but decides to ask what he knows about Toasa Amagi. Yokireta admits he doesn't know much, but before continuing, he asks if Yugir doesn't mind him revealing confidential information. She replies that as long as Akira obtains that information by his own means, she won't interfere. Since that's the case, Yokireta promises to tell them everything, but only if they stop being so formal with each other. Once that's settled, he shows them a map and reveals that a war between humanity and artificial intelligence broke out in 2052, resulting in billions of deaths. Now, it's easy to see how much the map changed because of that conflict. Professor Amagi was the savior who put an end to that devastation. But no one knows what really happened because, along with restrictions on digital processing technology, OL also imposed limits on historical knowledge, a desperate attempt to prevent that dark past from repeating itself. Nowadays, people have no idea that this world was built through countless sacrifices. Akira asks how she ended the war, and Yokireta explains that it was through the implementation of the external series, a program of armed androids created by Omagi. At that moment, the women who were with Yokireta call him back. But before he leaves, Akira asks what happened to Toasa afterward. He answers that no one knows after the war ended. Amagi founded Ol alongside the 6 sages, and after that, she vanished without a trace. Akira holds onto the hope that she might still be alive. But Yokireta reminds him that the war happened 200 years ago, and it doesn't seem rational to think Omagi is still living. After that conversation, Akira becomes thoughtful about all those impressive revelations regarding the war against the Eyes and the founding of Ol by Toasa's hands. Even so, that doesn't stop him from finally relaxing a bit in the inn's hot spring. As soon as he realizes he's alone, the lucky guy starts swimming freely and enjoying this rare moment. However, just as he starts getting into the mood, he bumps into Yugir naked in the water. Mortified, she starts throwing wooden buckets at the poor guy. Meanwhile, Amaru calmly draws in the inn's beautiful garden until Akisai appears to praise the girl's talent. Hanayama arrives soon after to comment that this garden is one of the inn's greatest prides, which prompts Akisai to start teasing the other woman, leaving Amaru wishing she could disappear. Back in the bath, after Yugir sent confusing signals about whether Akira should move away or come closer, the two ended up facing away from each other, but so close that they sometimes brushed against each other. The plan was for both of them to leave the water without looking at each other. But Yugir broke the standoff to comment on how beautiful the sky looked that night. Meanwhile, Amaru began to lose her temper amid the couple's endless squabbling and ran off shouting that their Ailsi was a nightmare. Turning to the boy and giving him a back massage, Yugir asked why he had jumped in front of the gunfire at the restaurant, since she would have been fine. He said he knew that on a rational level. But before he could continue his answer, Amaru showed up furious that the two were together without her. Without caring, she jumped into the water, shouting that she was part of this too, and that behavior made her friends laugh. When Akira came out of the bath, Akisai whispered in his ear that he seemed to have enjoyed himself, which was great, since the idea of this inn was to make people feel love flowing through the air. Akira thought love was a strong word, so Yokireta frowned and asked how the kid dared to bathe with someone he didn't have feelings for. When the boy explained it was an accident, the two kept teasing him, doubting his word. When Yugir and Amaru arrived, the artist asked which place would be best to draw a sketch, and Yokireta pointed on a map to the crater of the third strike, a huge hole formed during the war that now offered a beautiful view despite its history. When Amaru got excited about visiting the area, Hanayama promised to take her, since it was easy to get lost there and it was also on her way to work. In that case, Yokireta confessed he'd like to join the group. In the middle of it all, Akira asked Yugir if she'd like him to do something to repay the favor, since she had taken care of him while he was injured. Extremely nervous, the android had never stopped to think about something like that. But after reflecting a little and gathering all her courage, she invited the boy out on a date. The next day, while Yugir and Amaru are still sleeping, Akira goes to the hot spring and runs into Yokireta and Hanayama together in the water. The boy is startled and doesn't understand what they're doing there. Then his friend explains that this spring is mixed, meaning anyone can enter, regardless of gender. He and the woman joke that the kid should hurry up and get in before catching a cold, especially on the day of his date with Yugir. And even though Akira accepted the android's invitation, he insists that it's not exactly a date. At lunchtime, after devouring his meal as he always does, Yugir suddenly excuses herself and leaves the table, leaving Akira confused since she usually asks for more food. Amaru pretends not to hear anything, because she knows very well what's going on. Earlier, she had been woken up by her friend in their room and had to give her some important advice. Anyway, after lunch, it's time for the groups to leave, each going their own way. Akira asks Yokireta to take care of Amaru, and the man comments that Akira really cares about the girl. Hanayama arrives all smiles, saying how the bath she took with Akira earlier was wonderful, and Amaru is outraged when she hears that. But since there's no time to argue, she promises to bring it up later when they return from the trip. Then Ajisai quietly approaches to ask if the boy had fun earlier. He becomes completely embarrassed and desperate to explain himself after all. It's her wife involved, but Ajisai seems strangely calm. At that moment, Yugir appears, dressed up for the long-awaited date, charming Akira even though he doesn't say anything. Extremely shy, the woman asks how she looks. But since Akira freezes and can't answer, Asahi steps on his foot and tells him not to blow it now that everything's going perfectly. Meanwhile, the other group heads to the top of the observation deck to catch the best view of the Great Explosion Crater. Despite its intimidating name, Hanayama assures them it's a beautiful place, her favorite. In fact, on the other hand, she sadly discovered that the area contains valuable minerals that can be mined. Yokureda figures this must be related to Owl's development project and wonders if they plan to turn the hot spring into a mining site. Amaru is shocked just thinking about it, but Hanayama says she won't let that happen. The man asks how she can say that since she's the supervisor of the Owl project herself. She replies that she has many wonderful memories of this place, and besides, the hot spring means everything to Asahi. That's why she can't tell her wife about the mining project, because if it really happens, Hanayama might never be forgiven by the person she loves the most. Back to Akira and Yugir, both of them are clearly uncomfortable and unsure how to act. The girl comments that the weather is nice, and he awkwardly agrees. He asks if he's walking too fast, and she says no. Yugir asks if he did any kind of preparation for this moment, and he says a little after all. He also wants it to be fun. Then, when he spots a barbecue stall, he gets the perfect idea to make the date more exciting, because the secret to any successful date is feeding the woman. Akira seems to understand that well when he shows up with a skewer of meat wrapped with fried onions. The woman's stomach growls, but she refuses to accept it, afraid her face will swell up from eating too much. Akira reminds her that she's a robot, but she argues that it's more of a psychological thing. However, after a bit of insistence from the boy, the lady changes her mind and becomes fascinated after taking the first bite. Later, Yugir sees some flowers along the way and remembers that Akira gave some to Fides, so she hints that she would also like to receive some. The handsome boy asks if she prefers flowers or dango, and she's about to answer dango right away, but remembering that she should act like a lady, she changes her answer and says she prefers flowers. Still, her rumbling stomach gives her away. Next, the two stop at the Hijaku foot bath while eating flower-shaped ice cream at the top of the observatory deck. While Amaru sketches the crater, Hanayama comments that the place is known as an excellent spot for dates. That makes the artist remember when Yugir woke her up earlier that morning asking for advice about what to do on her date with Akira. When Amaru found out the two were going out together, she did everything she could to tag along. But Yugir gathered her courage and asked to be alone with the boy just this once. After a lot of reluctance and a huge tantrum, Amaru finally gave in and decided to let it go just this time. But thinking about it now, she feels sad because she also wanted to be with Akira. Speaking of him, the boy continues his walk alongside Japan's most love-struck android. After she trips on something and almost falls, Akira is there to stop it from happening, and the way it happens is quite romantic, to say the least. During the fall, Yugir's sandal strap breaks. Then Akira, in a chivalrous gesture, manages to fix her shoe, making her smile from ear to ear. Her joy is so contagious that Akira can't help but notice her beauty. In fact, for the first time, he gathers the courage to tell Yugir how beautiful she is. Meanwhile, on the other side of the crater, the fake jealous girl complains to everyone about what she's feeling. Yokureda advises her to be honest and say what she really means. After a few seconds of hesitation, the girl confesses that she really likes both Yugir and Akira, and because she's so greedy that she wants them both at the same time. She's afraid they'll end up together and there won't be anything left for poor little her. Thus, the man advises the girl to tell them about it. Amaru is afraid things might get weird if she does. But as Yokureda points out, love is always a complicated thing, and Amaru seems to understand what he means so much that she agrees to be honest with the one she loves. By the way, Yokureda asks how things are going with Hanayama, and whether she's afraid that Asahi might stop loving her. Hanayama replies that this would never happen, because her wife is a kind person. Back in the year 2045, Ikikishima comments that Toa takes care of Dabu as if he were her own son, as if she wanted to prove her love for Akira. Since the subject came up, Toa asks if Ikikishima thinks an AI can love a human being, and the robot replies that it cannot, because eyes have no bodies or feelings. About that, the scientist completely disagrees, because if your entire existence is dedicated to someone, that means you want to be someone precious to that person. Ikikishima asks if he is precious to Toa, and she answers yes, even though the two of them can't get married. In any case, it's important that the AI remembers the following. Feelings are not tied to flesh. They grow and turn into affection for someone. Then, those feelings become the driving force of evolution. Speaking of the Great Explosion Crater, Yugir arrives at that magical place with those same words from Toa in her mind. Knowing that this was the site of an intense battle, Akira jokingly asks if she's the one who blew everything up, and she hurriedly answers that it was Yoyami. Akira remembers that this Yoyami is one of the 2 androids they met at the Hakodate Research Center, and Yugir not only confirms this but also says that Yoyami and Hakubo are her sisters, and that all of them are battle weapons, known as external series, created to end the war. Speaking of which, the robot asks what the human thinks of her now that he knows this. Akira isn't sure, since he slept for so long and woke up in such a different environment that even the place he's in now, for example, feels more like fiction than reality. As for Yugir, no matter how much she says she could cause as much destruction as that crater, he doesn't feel afraid after all. She has always helped him however she could, and he knows her well enough to say that the android wouldn't do harm. Yugir says the guy is acting weird for thinking that way, but he throws it back at her, since she's the one who started talking about being a war weapon in the middle of a date. With that, Yugir catches the boy red-handed, admitting that it is a date, and then jokes that they should just get married already to get things over with. Before leaving the crater, the woman asks the 2 of them to take a photo to keep the memory of that moment. Then she goes on the offensive and makes it clear that if he's going to kiss her, now's the time. Akira gets startled and embarrassed, so the girl raises the stakes and confesses that she loves him, and his reaction to that is what ends up captured in their photo together. When they arrive back at the inn, Asahi asks how far they went, and Akira says they went to the Great Explosion Crater, but that's not what the innkeeper meant. At the same time, the rest of the group arrives, and Hanayama decides to confess everything about Ole's excavation project at the hot spring, admitting that the inn could disappear because of it. But the real reason why Hanayama is still inside Ole is precisely to stop that project from moving forward. And even if she's branded a traitor by the organization and hunted down, she doesn't care about any of that, because the only thing that matters to her is Asahi. Unfortunately, Hanayama hadn't had the courage to tell her all this before, afraid of making her wife sad. After hearing everything, Asahi asks if she can punch her beloved in the face, and she agrees, standing still to take the hit. However, Asahi changes her mind, kisses her wife, and simply says that she's there to carry this burden by the side of the person she loves. At bedtime, Amaru confesses to Yugir that she saw the couple at the crater earlier today, and that it wasn't cool at all. Honestly, Amaru wishes she had gone with them instead of being left out. Facing her feelings in the same way, Yugir admits that it was great going out alone with Akira so much that, thanks to today's trip, she feels the 2 of them are one step closer to getting married. Amaru can't believe what she's hearing and promises she won't let that happen again. So the 2 of them practically declare war on each other to see who will end up with the great Chad Akira Haimgani. When morning comes, the group of visitors says goodbye to the innkeepers. Amaru is glad that the 2 of them made up. But knowing Asahi, Akira doesn't doubt she'll soon find another way to pick a fight with Hanayama. Yugir, on the other hand, believes they'll be fine as long as they trust in the magic of the hot springs. Suddenly, the trio meets Yokireta in the middle of nowhere, and curiously, the man says he's looking for something that he feels he'll only find if he joins the friends on their journey. Besides that, he knows Sendai like the back of his hand and could be their guide. Thus, the man joins the group and travels with them by bus towards Sendai. Yokireta shows a particular interest in Akira's technological watch and finally works up the courage to borrow it and check if he could find any information about how the boy ended up there. After a few hours of analysis, he returns the object, saying he still hasn't found anything, although deep down he knows he discovered something beautiful in that device. Then, the group comes across a panoramic view of Sendai and is fascinated by its size. Yokireta explains that this place has tons of facilities for training elites who will later work in Tokyo, and for that reason, it's known as the City of Scholars, where every kind of knowledge comes together. Yugir asks how Akira thinks he's going to find what he's looking for, considering that Ole greatly limits the knowledge offered to the population. But Yokireta is certain that the Sendai Knowledge Repository can give them a good answer, a library that is the pride of the city and still holds a good number of books. However, when they arrive there, the truth is that Akira feels a bit frustrated for not finding what he really wanted. Just like Yokireta, who knows the librarian of this place and knows how well she organizes the rows of books. Speaking of which, he takes Akira to Seisato, and then he asks where the books about the artificial intelligence were. The employee replies that they are forbidden books, and that Yokireta should know that as a member of OL, to change the subject. The man throws his charm at the woman and gives her a worthy hug. And although he didn't get anything about the war books, at least he managed to get a date for later. However, according to him, the truth is that there was another research alternative if the repository didn't work out. But that alternative is in Tokyo. The next train to that city leaves tomorrow afternoon, and while they wait, they could look in the library's secret archives, which, curiously, Yokireta has access to because he possesses the librarian Seisado's key. Akira asks if the guy stole that key, and he replies that there's nothing wrong with that after all. He just needs to apologize and everything will be fine. And the ideal moment for that will be at the meeting they're having later, which, by the way, Akira could use to make his search easier. Akira asks why he's doing all this for them, and Yokireta assures him that he's also interested in what the kids are looking for. Amaru encourages her friend to accept the help already, and since he knows he won't get another opportunity like this, he decides to take the key. Before nightfall, Yokireta advises them to take a look at the underground book market first, because it's possible they might find some rare book there. Yokireta himself won't be able to go with them, since he needs time to prepare for his meeting later, so he wishes them luck and leaves. With that, the trio sets out to buy the tickets and, along the way, Yugir and Akira remember that Amaru tried to look for her parents' books earlier, but since she didn't find them, they promise they won't rest until they get those works back. This makes the little girl extremely happy and certain that she's with the best people she could have found. Suddenly, Yugir is warned by her sensor that some threat is approaching, so she pushes her two companions away from the area and explains that Yoyami and Hakubo are nearby, probably because they discovered that the group was heading south and managed to reach this city at some point. Knowing the situation could become terrible if those two find her friends, Yugir says that the only chance for them to escape without trouble is for the android herself to cause a distraction to draw the pair away, allowing Akira and Amaru to flee. Considering that Sendai is the first station on the route to Tokyo, the two should buy 3 tickets to Tokyo and rent a very cheap room with 2 beds, no matter how precarious the hotel is. After explaining the plan to her partners, Yugir causes an explosion nearby, which immediately makes the 2 androids realize she must be responsible, even though Hakubo doesn't see this kind of action as something that matches Yugir's personality. Either way, Yoyami doesn't want to miss the chance, so she charges toward the blast. Akira and Amaru go to the station and buy 3 third-class train tickets to Tokyo, and the price ends up weighing heavily on the group's budget. Akira figures they'll have to find jobs at some point, but Amaru, as always, shows a concern that's part of her nature, as well as an ability to make the best of things when it comes to staying cheerful. Even though the situation is tense on several levels, they pass through a very beautiful small town that makes the girl's eyes shine with excitement, and she sees it as a chance to enjoy the moment by doing some shopping, even though money is tight. They stop at a market to look at different foods and visit a clothing store so Amaru can try on outfits she can't find just anywhere. At one point, they pass a street stall selling accessories and trinkets. Amaru gets the idea to buy a bracelet for each member of the trio. A yellow one for her, a red one for Akira, and a blue one for Yukir. Akira thinks it's excessive to spend money they don't have on that, but Amaru uses her playful charm on the vendor, who politely agrees to lower the price if they take all 3 accessories together. Leaving the shop, Amaru can't hide her pure happiness simply from feeling so fulfilled, even with difficulties knocking at the door. The pair takes a break to sit down after walking so much, and at the first opportunity, once they're talking about how worried they are about Yugir because of the threat posed by those 2 androids, the little girl asks her friend if he's in love with Yugir, since the 2 had gone on a date alone. Speaking of which, she admits it was hard to deal with, because she prefers when the 3 of them are together. Akira wants to marry that Tawasa girl. Yugir wants to marry Akira, and Amaru wants to do the ALC with Akira and Yugir. As for Tawasa, she doesn't know what that girl is like. But if she's in love with Akira, she must be a good person. If that's the case, Amaru offers to do the ALC with everyone together. Akira explains that she still doesn't understand the concept. In his case, he wants to marry only the woman he loves the most, which is Toa. Amaru insists that she loves Akira and Yugir equally and genuinely wishes the 3 of them could stay together. But when she realizes there's no point in making him repeat himself, she decides to drop the subject and pretend they never talked about it. After their break, they reach the underground book market, and even though it wasn't exactly a refined place, the girl's eyes shine again when she comes across so many options, especially with the possibility of finding what she's been searching for. Curiously, Oboro was working there. According to him, being a private driver doesn't pay very well, so he changed fields and opened his own stall in the market. Akira whispers that he's looking for banned books, and Oboro ends up blurting it out by shouting it loud and clear, attracting the attention of all the other merchants there. On the one hand, fortunately for the boy, the vendors turned out to be very helpful and interested in the subject. But on the other hand, unfortunately, an oil raid had taken place in the underground market, and government officials took almost all the banned books they had. Even so, most of them managed to hide some forbidden products in secret, and they quickly put all the available options on a table for customers to take a look. For a moment, the excitement of the two fades as they see that what they're looking for isn't their only books about generative AI and electrical engineering. By luck, a resident watching the conversation from a balcony knew where the books taken by Ol had ended up. Apparently, the raid was led by a gorgeous librarian who wears glasses, and she took the seized books to a secret room inside the library, where she placed them together with the books Ol planned to burn. However, for this woman, burning a book is like burning her own mother, which is why she hid those works, preventing them from turning to ashes. Since that's the case, with the library key in hand, Akira is ready to commit this crime. Meanwhile, Yokireta is entertaining that librarian, the young and beautiful Seisato, who, even though night hasn't arrived yet, is already completely drunk. Even though it's still early, she's thinking of going home, since the books she has won't read themselves. So Yokireta invites her to study a little practical anatomy before going home, and Seisato makes an exception in the name of her love for biology. Back to Akira and Amaru. They find only an old hotel room with a single bed, and the boy leaves it for his friend. She wastes no time and lies down to sleep a little, but asks him to wake her when it's time to go to the library at night. Earlier, in the black market, one of the vendors had given the boy the floor plan of the Sendai library, and also warned that there would probably be a guard on site even after closing. Worried about that, Akira decides to leave Amaru behind and heads out alone once night falls. However, as soon as he approaches the place, the girl appears angry, demanding an apology for being abandoned. Akira explains that they're without Yugir, and he can't guarantee her safety because of that. But Amaru makes a good point when she reminds him that only she knows what her parents' books look like, meaning she needs to go along. Since that's the case, the boy agrees to take her, as long as she agrees to run if things get dangerous. With everything settled, the pair uses the key to break into the library. And there they notice that there really is a guard, avoiding him at all costs. The two reach a room with a door that has a digital lock, which indicates it holds something important. The door needs an access card to open, and after searching for a while, Amaru manages to find the card in a desk drawer. However, even though it worked, unlocking the lock made a sound that alerted the guard, terrifying the intruders. Flustered, they try to pull the handle in every possible way, and only after a few seconds does Amaru brilliantly discover that the door opens by pushing. With both inside the next room, the guard reaches the previous one and decides that what he heard was just his imagination. Meanwhile, an alarm goes off at Seisato's house, and the woman starts getting ready quickly. According to her, the night with Yokireta was like experiencing a chapter straight out of a fairy tale, but her priority is the real books, the ones that need her now. By this point, Amaru and Akira have searched the room looking for the books, until they find a door Akira believes is important. However, the guard arrives where they are, and when she tried to hide, Amaru ended up tripping over some objects on the floor, fully alerting the guard. Cornered, the girl saw no escape except reacting more aggressively. With that in mind, she charges at the guard and knocks him to the floor by jumping him by surprise, but he quickly overpowers her. On top of that, the man is a pervert who sees the situation as a chance to take advantage of her. But Akira appears just in time to put him in a chokehold and knock him out with a blow. After doing that, the boy thanks heaven for having practiced judo. Afterward, the two enter the room Akira had been eyeing, and it looks more like a private office. Still, judging by the appearance and theme of the books, he assumes these works were banned, and that the books the merchants mentioned are probably there. Because of what just happened with the guard, Amaru comments that Akira acted just like her father. Most of the time he was gentle and calm, but whenever something bad happened to his daughter or wife, he turned into a beast. She even remembers a day when she was holding the book Heart Bird, and her mother took a nasty hit to the head from an old guard. At that moment, the girl's father appeared to hold off the officers, giving her a chance to escape. Fondly recalling that memory, Amaru thanks Akira for rescuing her. Speaking of that, she asks her friend to tell her what Toasa was like, and he says she was a ray of sunlight in his life, lighting his path wherever she went. Even though she was a little absent-minded, she was incredibly bright, and her expressions and emotions could change from one second to the next. In the middle of that, the person most responsible for taking care of the books in that office starts approaching. Akira pulls away a tarp and finally discovers a book by the author Toasa Amagi. Overview of Project LC. Quickly, he tries everything he can to open the glass protecting the work, and Amaru grabs a chair to break the display, but Seisato arrives just in time to knock the girl down with a whip. Then she orders the guard, who by now had already woken up, not to touch anything with his filthy hands and to call for reinforcements immediately. Then she starts whipping the entire office looking for the kids, saying that naughty boys need to learn to respect her little sweethearts, even though she destroys several books while trying to hit them. Acting like a madwoman, she claims that every book there is one of her lovers, and that absolutely no one can lay a single finger on them. In the middle of the commotion, Akira ends up tossing Toasa's book into the air, and on top of that, Amaru manages to spot one of her parents' books, The Special Blood. By coincidence, the two of them fall right next to each other, and since Seisato noticed that those brats are eyeing them, she makes a point of running her whip over the books to show dominance. Akira asks the woman to hand over the books, but as she had already said, Seisato insists that everything there belongs to her and only her. And if there's one thing that hurts her, it's when some random person keeps trying to get close to her beloved treasures, especially when they're planning to take them away from her, which is the worst possible crime. Akira argues that those books are much more important to him, while Amaru uses a slightly more convincing argument, which in this case was grabbing the guard's lantern and threatening to set everything on fire if the hag doesn't hand over the books. Without thinking, Seisato reacts with a whip strike that knocks the lantern down and starts a fire in the room, throwing the librarian into complete despair as she tries to put out the flames with her own hands while the alarm goes off. Outside, watching the library from afar, Yokireta wishes the boys good luck in getting out of there with what they want. In the middle of the fire, the book Akira wanted was on one side, and the one Amaru wanted was on the other, and they would probably only have time to save one before the flames consumed the other. Since Akira has already helped the girl in every way possible, she asks the boy to go after Toasa's book. With that, the pair rushes into the flames and manage to recover Amaru's parents' book, then run out of the room that's falling apart. In a brief moment of desperation, Amaru tries to run back to retrieve Toasa's science project book, but she's grabbed by Akira before the worst could happen. The girl doesn't understand how the boy can act so calmly in a moment like this, since it's the very thing he has been searching for this whole time, but with each passing moment he shows an enviable serenity and acceptance. On the other hand, acting in the opposite way, Seisato panics and has to be held back by the guards so she doesn't throw herself into the fire as she faces the horrendous sight of her dear loves in flames. According to her, it's as if her babies were screaming her name. After getting away from there, Akira and Amaru argue about whether they should return to the hotel now or not, until Yokireta appears with the kids' belongings, saying that it's a good idea, considering that all personnel can show up at any moment looking for them. Therefore, until the train departs, they need to find another place to stay. In the chaos, their own companion leads them to a good place to serve as a temporary hideout. In fact, Yokireta himself used this place to hide for a long time, since it's not easy to be tracked there. As if that weren't enough, he says there's even room service when he hands a cup with a drink to each of them. The man asks how Amaru's leg is, and she says it's fine. Akira apologizes for causing so much trouble, especially because it seemed like Yokireta was a guy who loved visiting the library. Calm as always, Yokireta replies that he'll be fine, and besides, he thinks he should thank the boy, since, as he said, he's also curious about what Akira is looking for. About that, the Japanese boy laments that everything went down the drain along with Toa's book. But their comrade says that one of the answers they're looking for is right in front of them in this case, in Amaru's parents' book Special Blood. Akira argues that it's a children's book, but the friend asks whether he really thinks Ole would ban just any children's story. Puzzled, Akira grabs the book and comments that the illustration is quite moving. When he opens the first page, the story tells about those people whose bodies carry special blood that allows them to possess mysterious powers. With these powers, these people could know exactly what their friends around the world were thinking, could express their feelings with a simple blink, and could touch things that were absurdly far away. However, if there are bad things that come for good, the opposite often happens too, and soon society began using the powers of special blood to do evil, dragging people into enormous sadness, and with that, the whole world followed into this emotional hole. However, it was then that, from the crystals of special blood, 12 beautiful angels identical to one another emerged, without any connection to the natural order of things. All those angels had their own abilities and, with their blood, they completely destroyed every trace of darkness and sadness in the world. Thinking about powers granted by special blood, Akira Himegami immediately remembers Toa's LC project, developed as a plan to upgrade humanity. Analyzing the work, the boy sees many similarities between the book Special Blood and the scientist's project, and also with the term ALC that Amaru uses so much. It might just be a coincidence, but the boy believes it's not. The next day, the group tries to escape the city, which is surrounded by Ole soldiers. With a ridiculous cloth on his head, Akira says everything will be fine if they act naturally, but as Amaru herself says, the kid looks more suspicious than anything. Even so, the trio manages to cross the train station without being stopped and board the carriage that will take them from Sendai to Omiya. Amaru asks about Yugir, especially since they bought her ticket. But Akira says that, knowing the android, she will be fine and will return. Yokireta agrees that there's no reason to stress, on the contrary. It's a moment to celebrate everything they've managed so far. Speaking of that, Amaru asks if they're really going to leave her with her parents' book, since it looked like Akira might need it too. Himegami admits that he might need it at one time or another, but he would like the story to stay with his friend, which gives her a sense of gratitude and responsibility. Maybe because of everything that happened yesterday, the girl has felt her heart race every time Akira is kind to her, but she keeps that to herself. Noticing her posture, Yokireta quietly comments that there's a ladies' man among them. Soon, when the train leaves the station, Yugir watches from afar and concludes that everything is on track, pardon the pun. With the situation secure, she shoots toward the vehicle and identifies her friends in the carriage where they are sitting. Likewise, they see the android running like crazy at the same speed as the train, until she jumps toward the door and enters as if she had been calmly waiting at the station. Amaru gives her friend a huge hug and starts crying after the risk she took in Sendai. Yugir says she's happy her partner found the book she wanted and, putting that aside, she asks Akira to take off that pathetic disguise. Speaking of the book, Yugir looks at the work with a smile on her face, until Amaru hands her one of the bracelets she bought for the three of them, specifically the blue one that was missing for the android to wear and match the other two. Yokireta asks if he's not getting his, and Akira jokes that the guy missed his chance. Amaru is overjoyed to see the trio with the accessories, while Yugir promises to take very good care of her bracelet. Suddenly, an orange rolls across the floor and bumps into Amaru's foot. A loud, over-the-top guy shows up, carrying a bag practically overflowing with a fruit, and hurriedly apologizes. He explains that he seriously misjudged how much he needed and ended up buying way more than he should have, even if it is his ALC partner's favorite fruit. Speaking of her, he introduces his companion, who is, ironically, the complete opposite of him when it comes to volume. While the guy sounds like he's yelling every sentence, the woman speaks so softly that you can barely hear her. He introduces himself as Ver and says he's traveling to Omiya on business, while his family is in the middle of moving. His ALC partner is Casta, and their 10-year-old twins are named Ruve and Kalo. Ver then asks where the group is headed, and Akira tells him they're going to Tokyo. Akira even comments that it must be tough bringing the whole family along wherever Ver gets assigned, and the man explains that he works as a guard for Ole, so he doesn't really get a choice in the matter. If the company orders him to leave a city, that's exactly what he has to do. On top of that, there was an arson case he somehow got tangled up in, which only made everything worse. As he says this, Ver lets out a booming laugh, leaving Akira with a "what is this guy even talking about" look on his face. Sitting next to Kalo while he sketches, Amaru compliments how well he captures the leaf's details and asks if he likes plants. The boy gets flustered right away, and his sister teases him, saying there's no need to turn that red, making him blush even harder. Amaru shows that she draws too and shares a few of her own sketches with her new friend. Yuger chimes in, saying the girl has just made an unexpected artist buddy. On that note, Ver mentions that Castor recently opened her own art studio, and Kalo inherited her artistic side. Yokureda thinks that's fantastic, especially when he starts imagining what those delicate fingers of hers are capable of painting. Ver immediately catches the meaning behind that comment and politely but firmly asks him to leave his partner alone, especially since she's sensitive about that kind of thing. Casta, however, responds softly that it's fine, she won't be the princess in the tower forever. Yuger points out how opposite the two seem and guesses that's exactly why they balance each other. Ruve adds that their system works perfectly, since his mother speaks so quietly that no one can hear her, and his father repeats everything she says like he's got a megaphone stuck in his mouth. Hearing that, even though he hasn't met many ALC couples, Akira thinks they actually sound more like a traditional marriage than anything else. Before they leave, Ver says he dreams of giving his kids a comfortable life once he settles into his new job. When the train stops at Omiya and Amaru steps off to stretch her legs, she can't stop thinking about how much Akira turns her on how cool he is, how confident, those muscular arms, and that smell of his that makes her want to devour him whole. Yokureda shows up and says love tends to distort the way we see everything. Amaru then confesses that, back in the library, Akira chose to save her book instead of Toa's, and that made her incredibly happy, even though she feels she shouldn't be, considering she still owed him one at the time. Yokureda tells her not to feel guilty. Those emotions bubbling up in her heart are more precious than anything. Embarrassed, Amaru admits he's right, and that she's lucky because Yuger was also worried about her book. Thinking about it all, she realizes she's falling for the two of them harder than she ever imagined possible. Even so, she asks if Yokureda can keep this a secret, and he jokes that she doesn't seem shy at all about showing her love for both boys every chance she gets. Meanwhile, Yuger and Akira get back on the train and see the couple from earlier arguing, or rather Ver is desperately apologizing, while Castor refuses to discuss it and returns to her seat, leaving him in a panic. He rushes over to the boys, begging them to help smooth things over with her. Once they're seated at one of the train's tables, Ver explains that the incident he mentioned earlier happened about a month ago, when he said something stupid that deeply hurt Casta's feelings. Akira asks what exactly he said. After stumbling around a bit, Ver finally admits that he had been involved with someone else. Yuger immediately says the guy deserves death, or no, death is too kind. Maybe something worse. Ver accepts the scolding but argues that it only happened once, 10 years ago. Back then, Casta had a very short fuse, and it happened right when they were expecting the twins. Hearing that, both Akira and Amaru turned furious after all. He cheated on her while she was pregnant. Mortified, Ver explains that he used to drink heavily at the time and ended up doing it with someone he had been in an ALC with before Casta. Yuger drops the bar even lower, saying he hopes the guy rots in hell, while Yokureda tries to break the tension by offering him a margarita. Akira stands up and says there's nothing they can do about that now, but Ver drops to his knees and begs for their help. He admits he was selfish and terribly wrong, but above all, he needs Casta's forgiveness so he can see her smile again. In that moment, the twins appear, asking if their father fought with their mother again, and if so, they hope he apologizes. They also join the group, wanting to help however they can, since the whole situation makes them really sad. Out of nowhere, none other than Mr. Oboro appears in the train car and delivers this piece of wisdom to the group. Good faith must come before any action a person takes. The guy was simply wearing a driver's uniform because, according to him, selling illegal books doesn't make much money, so he decided to change things up. Kalo asks what good faith means, and Oboro explains that it's putting your heart into something, because when we do that, we can show that our intention is true. Hearing this, the twins remember their mother's favorite orange tree, the one their father and she had back in ALC, and they imagine that Ver might try to revive those feelings in Casta's heart by reenacting the ALC proposal. Everyone points out that there obviously isn't an orange tree inside the train, but if there's one thing they have plenty of, it's oranges, since Ver bought a whole lot of them. Oboro even offers the help of his entire team, which leaves Ver emotional. As they plan, everyone splits into small groups to find something interesting that could be used in the setting for the proposal. Akira and Yuger form a pair, but the girl wants nothing to do with helping that guy, so she walks ahead of him. Left behind, Akira ends up being taken hostage out of nowhere by Yoyami, but Yugir quickly returns with her weapon pointed at the enemy. Yoyami says she's taking the human to Ool's headquarters, while Hakubo, who is sitting in the train car, says it makes no sense for them to chase each other forever. Then she walks up to Akira and runs her hand across his face with an unusual cheerfulness, which confuses the other two androids. Jealous, Yugir pushes the rival away, and Yoyami simply hugs Yugir and admits she missed her scent. Yoyami tells her partner to go, saying she'll take care of the rest now. So Yugir comments that Hakubo may act like a dog sometimes with all that clinginess, but Yoyami is certainly Ool's favorite little dog. Yoyami gets angry and brings her blade close to Akira's neck, while Yugir aims at the opponent again and tells her to let her partner go. Hakubo asks everyone to calm down, saying she's the older sister and she'll fix the mess. So Yugir promises not to run if Akira is released, mostly because she's tired of playing tag with Yoyami. Hakubo thinks it's a brilliant idea for everyone to have some tea to seal the peace, but Akira doesn't want any of that. He wants to know what the androids know about Tuasa. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Amaru wonders what Akira and Yugir found, and Yokureta comments that they definitely found something really crazy. Suddenly, Kasta appears looking for her kids, so Amaru pretends they went the other way so the woman leaves and doesn't notice what they're doing. However, the girl ends up spilling the truth and admitting they're helping Ver make peace with Kasta. Kasta replies that this isn't a simple matter of forgiveness, they have a family. After all, according to her, everything is very different from when Ver proposed Ailsi back then. Yokureta appears asking if Ver made the following vows on the day of the proposal. All my love for you and for no one else. Kasta confirms and says she said the same. But her friends laughed at her for wanting the love of just one person, saying she would suffocate Ver. Knowing Akira and Yugir, Amaru comments that there are other people who think the same way Kasta does, and that this isn't strange, even if it sounds a little lonely. Back with Akira, he reveals that, according to what he heard, Tuasa was responsible for putting an end to the AI war. So he shows the recording he has of Toa on his watch to ask how that whole story ended. In the recording, the scientist says, "I made many mistakes that haunt me today, and I have to live knowing what I did, carrying a burden alone because of my own fault." Akira asks what Tuasa did that was so bad, what happened after the war, and whether his sister is still alive. Hakubo responds that she would say everything if she had those answers, but unfortunately, they are in the same darkness as he is. Hearing this, Yoyami tells Akira to ask Yugir, since they chased that android for two reasons. One is to keep the superweapons known as the external series under surveillance, and the second is to find out what happened to Tuasa Omagi. Right after being released, Akira goes straight to ask Yugir about Toa, and Amaru listens in on the conversation from afar. The android insists that it's a forbidden topic, but the boy takes one step further and says he might try to force an answer. Before that, he asks if there's another reason why she doesn't want to talk about Toa, but emphasizes that he wants to hear both from Yugir and from the girl he loves. To illustrate what he means, he shows her the accessory that symbolizes the promise between the two of them. So Yugir takes off her earring so he can put it in its place. While that happens, the robot explains that she made only one promise to Toa, that maybe one day she would tell Akira the whole story. Hearing that, Amaru feels a tightness in her chest, while Yugir comments that their bracelets have different colors. Later, Ruve grumbles that he can't manage to adjust the buffet ribbon, which makes everyone around laugh. Akira points out how a banquet will always be a good wedding proposal in every era and civilization, and Hakubo remarks that it's a lovely tradition. He asks what she's doing there. The android replies that she knew it would be fun, and Yokureta makes it clear he doesn't mind at all having more beautiful women by his side. Hakubo comments that the big guy hasn't changed at all and asks how he's been doing since leaving Ool. Akira finds it curious that the two of them know each other and turns his eyes toward Yugir, who is isolated in her corner. Amaru, meanwhile, was keeping her eyes on the man she loves, until Kalo calls her to take a look at the drawing he made of his family. He's unsure if it will make his mother happy along with the banquet. All of a sudden, Hakubo hugs the two of them from behind and points out that both of them have an artist sent Amaru with a smell of melancholy and nostalgia. Speaking of which, Kalo asks why Hakubo and Yoyami have the same face as Yugir. Speaking of Yoyami, somewhere else in the train, while drinking heavily, she complains that it's typical of her sister to run away from responsibilities to wander around from one place to another. In any case, when they get to Amiya, she will settle things, no matter what. practically venting to Oboro. She tries to understand what the point is of being part of all. Remembering her sister's smug face, Yoyami is overtaken by another memory. When she and the other androids were being created in the laboratory, Toa felt sorry for the units because they didn't have a more unique appearance, which had been her idea from the beginning. Even so, from that moment on, these androids, as daughters of Toa Omagi, would represent humanity's hope. At another time, years later, Yoyami became desperate when Hakubo told her that Toa had disappeared and taken only Yugir with her. From that moment on, the question that remained in Yoyami's mind was this: if they're all a family, then why did Toa and Yugir leave alone and leave the rest behind? Listening patiently to the drunk robot's outburst, the train employee comments that it's probably harder to deal with because they're sisters. Yoyami dislikes that he acts as if he knows everything, when in the end, there he is also running from his responsibilities. With a sigh, Oboro comments that the lady probably overdid it on the alcohol. Some time later, apart from everything else happening, Casta looks melancholically out the carriage window with the bag of oranges in front of her, until Ver arrives with his children in front and friends behind him, ready to finally make his proposal with a bouquet of flowers in hand. All nervous, he extends the bouquet and promises to love only Casta until the end of their lives, asking only for one more chance. She, in turn, without a smile on her face, points out that Ver doesn't understand anything. Worried, Ruve asks what her mother said, and she replies, "I meant that I'm grateful." Then she smiles. With that, the daughter announces that the plan was a success, so Yokireda, who is playing an accordion, gets excited for real and turns up the volume. The other passengers in the wagon wish the couple well, while little Kalo is too shy to give his mother the drawing he made. Likewise, Akira and Yugir end up looking at each other in that romantic moment and also become embarrassed, unlike Amaru, who watches it all and feels completely left aside. Because of that, the girl isolates herself for a moment in the bathroom to lament the fact that she can't handle this. Deep down, she just wished she had told them to include her in that moment, and now she feels more out of place than ever. Suddenly, Amaru notices Casta approaching the sink and, without being seen, hears the woman crying after throwing the bouquet she received into the basin. Kalo goes after his mother and shows her that he made a drawing to help everything work out, which leaves Casta very emotional. Back in the wagon, Ver eats an orange with great excitement, while his daughter celebrates that everything turned out well in the end. The father asks if the secret was the orange banquet, and the girl replies that the big guy really doesn't know anything. After all, even though the daughter was supposed to keep it a secret, the truth is that her mother doesn't like anything sour, and Casta never admitted it because she thought it was cute how that became a symbol between them. So, in the end, she does like oranges, even though she doesn't like sour foods. Kalo asks if his mother hates his father now, and hugging the boy, she says she loves Ver and returns to the wagon. Amaru approaches to see how the boy is doing, and he thinks his mother was crying because of the drawing he made. Amaru quickly makes it clear that no, on the contrary, his drawing was very important to show the truth to his mother. Because even though the truth hurts, she can't pretend everything is fine forever. Kalo asks if that also applies to Amaru, and those words strike her heart like an arrow. When she returns to her husband, Casta invites him for a walk, and the two of them go to an empty place where she admits she can't forgive Ver. She says he lied back then when he said he would love only her, and he lied again today. Casta knows Ver regrets what he did. Her heart feels that, but it's not enough. The truth is, Casta will never be able to forgive Ver for what he did. Ver says it's the first time he's heard his wife raise her voice like that, and Casta goes on to announce that next season, she will get off with the children and return to Sendai. As she says it, she removes an ear accessory and hands it back to her husband, who now seems to officially be her ex-husband. With tears in his eyes, Ver says he understands and lifts his hand to take the accessory, then tells her one last time that he loves her. With a trembling voice, Casta says she loves him too. When the train takes a curve, Amaru's sketchbook falls open to a page that makes Akira curious. He looks at it and sees, among several drawings of himself, one showing him next to Yugir, and what grabs his attention most is the expression on his own face, as if it revealed how he truly felt in that moment beside that woman. In the end, he thinks he might be kind of an idiot for acting normally around Yugir's and Amaru's feelings without confronting them, while saying he loves Toa. When morning comes and the train stops at the next station, it is painful for Ver to watch his wife and children leave, just as it is for them. Sad. Akira doesn't understand why Casta did that after saying she loves Ver. And Amuro answers that it's exactly because of that, because she loves him, that she couldn't forgive. After all, what do you do when someone you love so much lies to you like that and hurts you that deeply? Suddenly, Kalo appears with a drawing from Amuro to give her as a gift. Because she was sad, he points out that he thinks she looks even prettier when she smiles. So she smiles and promises to take good care of the artwork. Hakubo appears to assure them they don't need to worry, because they'll see each other again since they're two peas in a pod sharing the same scent. As the train starts to move, Amuro tells the boy to never stop drawing so he can keep improving his skills, and that one day she'll return to see everything he's created. Meanwhile, Yoyami is still leaning over the bar counter. Oboro asks if the girl really wants to arrive in Amiya drunk soon. So the android activates her ability to instantly eliminate toxins from her body and gets ready to move. And sure enough, the train stops at Amiya Station, one of several post-war settings where the structures are completely destroyed. After arranging a place for everyone to stand, Yoyami challenges Yugir to a fight. Akira tries to stop her, but Hakubo asks him to stay out of it. He doesn't understand how she can say that when the sisters' lives are at stake because of a fight between them. But Hakubo answers that she is only a spectator in this conflict. Yoyami also has her own role in all of this. Besides, she has her own reason to fight Yugir. Yoyami raises her sword and promises to take Yugir back to Ol, but her opponent reacts with a quick long-range attack and starts the fight. From there, we see Yugir always keeping her distance, continuing her attacks made of laser shots, while her rival needs to get close in order to actually be effective with her main weapon, the katana. Things heat up even more when Yugir activates her cannon, which practically devastates everything around them, forcing Hakubo to protect everyone else with an energy shield. Even though she manages to stay far and on the offensive, Yugir still can't hit Yoyami, who knows all her opponent's tricks like the palm of her hand. With that knowledge, the swordswoman gets close and lands a slash on her rival, who protects herself with the shield. The force of the impact creates a powerful explosion. Yokireta asks if they should really keep letting this go, because considering the severity of the situation, soon one of them is going to end up as scrap metal. Hakubo thinks there's a good chance they both will. Speaking of that, Yugir rises from the explosion's debris and spits out a tooth, then takes a surprise strike that she manages to block at the last second with her shield, but the protection shatters, forcing her to dodge the blows physically. Akira gets worried seeing his friend only able to run in this fight, but Hakubo clarifies that it's not exactly like that. Right then, Yugir manages to restore her shield again, but her opponent's strength is so great that once more it's smashed to pieces. From that moment on, Yoyami had everything in her favor. Her rival was cornered, so she orders her to surrender and say where Toa is. However, this whole act was part of Yugir's plan. She expected Yoyami to relax so she could fall into the trap prepared for her. Yugir's small robots fire ropes that bind the swordswoman's limbs and deliver a destructive electric current, knocking the android down and leaving her completely immobile for a few minutes. The winner points her cannon at the defeated one and demands that she leave her and Toa alone. In Yugir's opinion, it's time for Yoyami to overcome what happened and move on with her life. Remembering what happened with anger, Yoyami says that her sister left with their mother without telling anyone anything. Fueled by that rage, she regains movement and manages to grab her sword. In an extremely fast motion, she slices Yugir's chest and hits her core, dropping her instantly. Without her sister's cooperation, the swordswoman sees no other choice but to end this once and for all. With that, Yoyami raises her katana to deliver the final blow. In desperation, Akira runs toward his friend as his mind fills with memories of her. This action triggers a reaction in his own body, which seems to slow down time with how fast he's moving. With that unbelievable speed, he reaches Yoyami just in time and knocks her down, but the collision makes the katana strike his shoulder. Confused, Himegami asks what happened, and the swordswoman explains that he deactivated the limiter. With great effort, Yugir manages to ask her friend not to listen to Yoyami, but he was completely immersed in the subject and wanted to know what she was talking about. The swordswoman explains that it's a standard feature built into androids. So Akira checks the wound on his shoulder and notices that he isn't bleeding, since his interior is metallic. Hakubo points out that the boy should have suspected this from the beginning, but chose not to see it. Hearing that, a movie plays in Akira's mind, first the moments of his appearance in this world destroyed by war, and then events from his normal life in Japan alongside Toa. Yoyami laughs and emphasizes how cruel Yugir was for never telling the boy the truth. And even Himegami himself questions why his friend hid this from him all this time they were together. Feeling betrayed, the man remembers Amaru's words about why Casta didn't forgive Ver, the pain caused by a lie this big coming from someone we love. Not wanting to hear anything else from Yugir, the android is pulled inward and falls into an existential crisis, which leads him to question where his childhood memories came from, whether everything he feels is a lie, a chemical invention, whether his thoughts or emotions are all artificial. In the end, if he isn't Akira Haimgami, then his search for Toa makes no sense at all. In the midst of this, Yugir somehow manages to enter Akira's inner scene of self-reflection to try to explain herself. She feared he wouldn't understand the full situation if she simply threw this fact in his face. Either way, Akira doesn't want to hear any justifications and now sees himself as an artificial being, a lie, with no reason to exist, given the circumstances, and hoping to regain Akira Haimgami's trust. Yugir sees no other choice but to finally reveal everything that happened to the world, to the two of them, and, most importantly, to Toa Amagi. Check out these videos appearing on your screen and subscribe so you don't miss the next part.